Just test audio. Andrew, can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Andrew?
No, we can't. Sounds like.
Chris, can you hear us? Okay, so it's a problem on Andrew's.
Okay.
Is the
Can we? I'll give you a minute or so to rectify it, and if not, we'll continue on. And
Yeah, well, if Chris can hear us, it's not on.
He's muted, he said. He's not muted.
He's not muted.
He's not muted.
Is the owl muted on our system?
No, so Chris can hear us. Chris, can you nod if you can hear us? Can you respond, Chris?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Yep.
Must be a problem on Andrew's end.
type it in the chat. Well, you keep working on that, okay. I'll continue. Recordings of council meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without the prior written consent of the general manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on the council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory comments.
Andrew McKibben. Yeah, I'm unmuted.
I've got you.
No, can't hear a thing.
We can hear him. We can hear
We
him.
can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I can't hear anything you're saying.
We're not speaking.
Well,
Or Mark's saying, or Gary's saying, or anyone's saying.
Andrew, the only noise we're hearing is you at the moment.
We can hear you.
I heard vaguely what Mark said then, but it was very vague. The microphone must be picking it up.
All right. Well, I'll speak up as loud as I reasonably can, Andrew.
Mark.
Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Darug people, and respects the history and culture of the elders, both past and present.
I'm just checking the audio now, microphone.
Pastor Joe, would you care to say a prayer?
Thank you. That'd be great. Well, Father God, we thank you so much, first and foremost, for this beautiful part of the country that we get to call home. And Father, I thank you for each and every one of our councillors and our mayor. Thank you for their willingness to lead our community, Father, to the best of their ability. And so, Father, we ask tonight for your wisdom and your guidance. May you guide our conversations and give us wisdom in the deliberations and the decisions that are made. We thank you. We thank you that you will guide and direct us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
There are no leave absence, and both Councillor McKibben and the Director of Technical Services are joining this meeting via Zoom. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations? There are no presentations. The public gallery is open to members of the community in accordance with requirements under the current public health order. Any questions from the public will be able to be asked in person. The community is to be given the opportunity to ask questions at the commencement of the council meeting, and the mayor is to ask questions from the gallery, ask 4 questions from the gallery prior to the commencement of the ordinary meeting. Members of the public wishing to address council are permitted to do so, provided the following guidelines are adhered to. The person asking the question at the council meeting must clearly state their name and in what capacity they are acting. If the person asking the question is acting for another person or organisation's agent, they must advise council if they have their prior consent or authority. Questions from the public are not an opportunity for debate with elected representatives or staff. It's an opportunity for the community to ask a question in relation to an issue or put a point of view relating to an issue that may be causing interest or concern. Due to time constraints, the time frame of 3 minutes per speaker is allocated. All questions and comments must be directed through the Mayor, and in the instance of a question, if it cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and a response given within a reasonable period of time. This is the only opportunity for a community member to address council during an ordinary meeting. Is there anyone who has a question?
No one else? Yeah,
Robin?
hi.
Robin Wiseman?
My name is Robin Wiseman. Yeah, okay, thank you. As some of you are aware, some or a lot of you aren't, but I've taken an interest in the recreation ground since we've lived across the road from it. And I want to thank the council for the grandstand and also putting up the basketball hoops for the kids and for young adults, because I've noticed there's at least 2 different groups of men, young men, who actually play basketball over there. And from the beginning, I did point out once before when I had asked about the basketball courts, what do you call them? Stands. Anyway, I did mention that the ground, there were holes still in the concrete, and my concern is that they play very robustly, and my concern is that if one of them fall there, council will be hit with probably a sewer of some kind, because it's not a level playing area. I'd also mentioned that the stand, as great as it is, the rain, it needs a wall on the other side of the footpath to stop the runoff of the mud that continually comes down. If we don't put because I don't really think a sheet at the back, a wall across the back is going to be of any great use as far as the mud that follows through, and you can't sit there after there's been rain of any consequence. I'd also ask, because the cricket pitches are being used, if it's possible, if when they've been filling roads, if they've got a bit left over, to fix the pitch up, because when people play with their balls there, sometimes they'll shoot off. That's what I would just like to mention, that I'd like to see the pitches sort of tidied up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Anyone else with questions? Good
evening all. My name is Sig Servik, and I'm speaking for myself. I just wanted to make a couple of short comments on the hub. The best outcome, in my view, would be simply to terminate the project, including rejecting the DA. In addition to all else, it would free up council to consider more relevant issues. If the council must go down the road to try to salvage some part of the project by having a 1-month discussion with the tenderer with the least worst tender, I suggest that it needs to look at ways to cutting back on hub size and complexity. The joining together of the Hooper and the new construction and the library is complex and costly, in part due to the ground level of the Hooper being higher than the library and the new build. It has negative cost flow-on effects across the whole project. A better solution is to leave the Hooper freestanding as it is and do a more modest extension of the existing library. The 250-seat auditorium should be eliminated altogether. It is not needed and will compete with the RSL and the Gilmore, the Malachi Gilmore. Councillors should ensure that proper costings are produced for their consideration, including explicitly stated costing assumptions and clearly stated contingencies. Finally, when the costing and design is to hand and before council takes a decision, a public meeting should be convened to ensure that the community understands all design and cost issues and the associated financial risks and can give its feedback to council. Thanks.
Any more questions? Right. Thank you for those questions. And we'll move on to the body of the meeting. First item is item on page is item 8, and that is confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover and a second, please? Thank you, Pastor Joe. Mover and a seconder. Andrew, Councillor McKibben and Councillor Tucker. Councillor McKibben. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to move the recommendation for the 11th of February 2022 be accepted by this council as a true record of that meeting.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Tucker.
I agree, although I think Councillor McKibben said 11th, but the 15th.
Oh, sorry, it was the wrong date. Yes, apologies.
But nothing more to add, thank you.
No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed. Item 0901, the mayoral minute and report. Can I have a second, please? Councillor Trembath. I won't speak with my own minute, so you get a chance to speak.
Well, you look like you've had a very busy period with all the meetings that you've attended in this time. Some really good things that we've seen happening for the month. In particular, the new CEO of Columbia and into my head here. The grant, the Strong Communities Round 3 grant to build a youth hall in Oberon seeking council assistance. I think that's a great project. But all in all, busy time.
All right, any other comments or questions? Andrew, sorry, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree with Councillor Trembath, a very busy month. If I could ask a couple of questions, and they relate to page 8, the meeting with the manager of the Oberon Correctional Service Centre, I think it was Justin Quinn, and there was some, I think, appointment of a new security officer, read the memorandum of understanding. Can you update us as to whether there is any progress on the memorandum of understanding and where we stand with the memorandum of understanding?
The memorandum of understanding lapsed essentially previous 2 years.
Yes.
And, for all sorts of reasons, it mostly to do with the correction centre and their ability to have anyone interact with the inmates and the staff. The correction centre is very keen to move it forward, as we are, and they are coming back with any additions or alterations to the draft MOU that may be necessary, noting the 2 years of hiatus, and we will be signing it as soon as we get that and have our own look at the document. And I'd expect that to be done within the next few weeks.
And if I could follow that with a question on the page 9 at the top, the meeting with the correspondence, I think it was from Chris Taylor, Regional General Manager. TPG is a competitor of Telstra, so I assume that TPG is using Telstra's infrastructure in regional New South Wales to expand their ambit. Is that what that means?
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
It suits TPG, and I'm sure it suits Telstra because they're probably getting a fair amount of cash out of that particular deal.
And noting the last issue on that same page, the letter from Orange Community Broadcasters. Do we see that as a further opportunity to promote Oberon further afield in Orange in particular through that opportunity?
We haven't responded to them just yet, but that is certainly in my mind. I'm not sure how effective it will be. Depends on how much airtime we get, but we will be exploring options to cooperate with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? All right. Put the motion that report 90901 is received as information. All in favour? Passed. So item 10.0, sorry, 10.01. Item 10.01. This is a notice of motion from Councillor Tucker. And the motion is that that a report be provided to the next Works Committee meeting about the proposed upgrading of the Fish River crossing at Noonans Hill Road, including the design of the crossing, including proposed culvert size and any measure to prevent blockage or damage to the crossing from debris, an analysis of the frequency at which the river can be expected to overtop the upgraded crossing, and the estimated cost of the project. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Traditionally, the person who puts the motion up moves it.
Sorry, Ian.
Councillor Tucker and Councillor Tremblay.
A second, sorry.
You're
Still
right.
learning.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that's reasonably straightforward what I'm getting at, that I think it is worth going through the process before construction commences, just to have a look at what outcome will be achieved in terms of, particularly on the second dot point, how often we could expect that crossing to be at the top. That's really all it's about. Just also noting that the heading on that report is it says road audit steering committee, etc.
Yep.
Great. Councillor Tremblay.
Through the chair to the general manager. Can I confirm that this was a resolution of the previous council?
Through the chair, that's correct. Yeah, the Noonans Hill culvert repair was approved by a council meeting before this one. Yes.
Then there should be no reason for us to be discussing this any further.
Through the chair, it's always at council's discretion to discuss any of these matters. However, any resolution of council from this nature would need to either be superseded or the previous report rescinded on the basis of how it was approved in September last year.
So if we go down this road, that means that previous decisions could be brought to the table again, unless we just move on to this as a decision was made.
So through the chair, there's always an opportunity for council to bring back reports through a number of processes that relate to the code and what that allows you to do. In this instance, a project was approved by council to restore an existing culvert, and that's what council staff have been preparing the work for. If further work is required as part of this, it will be a council decision to do so, but it's something that we would need to stop and have a look. So the repair work would need to be delayed.
I can see Councillor McKibben.
It's all right. Well, no, you-
So,
you've asked-
Through the chair, you've asked questions of me and I'm answering them.
Yes, no. Mystery sitting here. It's just that a decision was made by the previous council based on a recommendation from the technical director and his team. And their expertise is what we rely on, even now ourselves, and so with the previous council. So I think that we should just move on from this and concentrate on the bigger issues.
Councillor McKibben?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a couple of points. First of all, the seconder of a motion usually supports it, doesn't speak against it. Number one. And number two is I note from the actions report, the current status of that resolution is not, it was basically the replacement of the causeway. It wasn't to replace the existing causeway. It was a replacement and funded for 80,000. Because it's now going to be a concrete structure utilising two concrete box cells with a concrete overlay surface. And it's currently subject to having approval from the New South Wales Fisheries to the design. So bearing those issues in mind, I'm not sure that Councillor Tucker's notice of motion is inconsistent. It is basically not saying don't proceed with that notice of motion. It is just saying we want a report. If there's any clarification needed, maybe we should ask, add a point to the notice of motion to say that the project as endorsed on 21st September 2021 not proceed until the investigations requested in this notice of motion have been provided and the report received from New South Wales Fisheries is obtained. I noticed technically we probably haven't got a seconder if the seconder has spoken against it. And I'm probably proposing alluding to an amendment, so I probably shouldn't be seconding it, but I'll leave that to those much more skilled in the meeting process than me.
Councillor Hayden?
I'm happy to second that if it needs.
Well, it's already been seconded. The fact that the seconder spoke against it is unusual, but not unheard of.
Right, okay. Well, could I?
Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Because Councillor McKibben's already had a chat. I'll come back to you, Councillor McKibben.
Yes,
Councillor Watt?
Mr. Mayor, I just would like some technical assistance here to understand the downside of proceeding with this. I guess it delays the project.
Correct.
But we have more accurate information. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. So the way that the Noonans Hill replacement occurred was a replacement of an existing bridge. Sorry, the replacement of an existing culvert, and that culvert has been designed in accordance with the recommendation that's been provided to council, been provided by council. My understanding about this notice of motion would be that the idea of finding out or doing hydrological assessment on the bridge would give an indication of, well, if you make it bigger, you'll be able to support more increased flows or increased flows of water, and that will no doubt delay the program because it will require a council resolution again on top of the one that you've already provided to staff. Does that make sense?
Anyone else? I saw you first, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion on a couple of issues. One is, I think the motion is relevant because it also gives us some information that we really need to know. And even though it's been costed before, it was costed on the replacement of the
to say so that fisheries wouldn't take pipes, they have wanted box culverts. And the report come to council for $80,000, which council approved. Now, we've already had audits to say that our project management needs improving. So I think if we do these steps that are outlined in the notice of motion, we're improving those methods that we do these projects, ever how small they are. I know it's only $80,000, but it's $80,000 that we could spend somewhere else if we didn't have to spend. I'm not saying it's not going to be 80,000, probably ballpark, but we need to be sure, we need to get these processes in place, even if they are for smaller projects. And I think council have a need to know, and I think the ratepayers need to know. So I support Councillor Tucker's motion. The other thing is the resolution from the 25th of September. It's not clear on whether it's replacing it for light to light. It's clear that what was there wasn't up to the standard that's required. So you wouldn't, anyone with any common sense couldn't put something in light to light. So I don't think there's an issue there with council saying they'll repair it. Council agreed and resolved to replace it. And it should be something that's either equal or better standard. And I think we should be striving for better standards. So I think Councillor Tucker is well within his rights to ask for that information, and I think council are too.
Councillor Carter?
Yeah, I'm not against Councillor Tucker's request, and I don't think it stops the process of the thing. All it is he's asking that, say, if the two pipes that are there for a certain size, they might let 600 metres of flow through, but these culverts, they might let 1,200 through. And that's all I think he's asking, which you can't determine the amount of water going down there because it all depends on that dam, whether it's full or not. And I think he's just asking for the volume that it improves it. And if you have a look at the crossing down there, it's cracked in the middle, so you're going to have to repair the whole lot. It was repaired probably about 35, 40 years ago when we had a big flood there. But yeah, I just think the request is to just tell us what, by putting the culverts in, how much has improved the flow. That's all. That's the way I see it. And the estimated cost of the project, well, it's still got the, is it 80,000 or 88,000? Anyway, it's still got the money there to keep going ahead. I don't think this is going to stop it, does it?
I'm through the chair. I think that exactly stops it, because the whole intention of the hydrological report is that, well, we already know that we're putting pipes in that are greater in capacity than what the ones that were there before. We understand that. So to answer your question, it is going to have a better hydrological analysis. I don't need it, but this motion asks council to undertake an assessment to get an understanding about heights and making sure that we've got enough clear fall between the river and the running board. And Councillor Tucker will correct me if I'm wrong in my analysis of what he's asking for, that if we go bigger, then we might reduce that again. What I'm saying is that council staff have been acting on a resolution made by council that replaces the existing culvert. We've put improvements into the culverts where we can, where we know that we can get better flows. If council want us to do an analysis on that from a professional engineer, then that's what we'll do if that's what you require. But it's going to have an impact on whether this project can proceed as quick as the approval for a fisheries permit comes through.
Councillor, sorry.
I can't see here where the report requires the culverts to be changed. All he's doing is asking for what change it'll do to the flow in the river, as far as I can see. And that's like, there's two pipes there now, yeah, 450s. I don't know the size of the culverts, they weren't in the report, but does that give us twice the flow? And that's all, I'm happy with that. I don't want to see the estimated cost of the project, we already know that. But also knows that Chris wants to input into it and Andrew does. But
So
look, I
through
don't
the
want to see the thing stop. But
yeah, so through the chair, the first sentence in the report outlines that what's been asked for.
yeah, it's only asked for what it's going to achieve. That's all. It's just a matter of numbers, the way I see it.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask through you several questions through you, probably the General Manager, to the Technical Services Director? What is the increased size of the proposed box section culverts to be installed? How much bigger are they than what exists? Although a hydrological survey has not been done, the technical services must have some indication as to how much more water these are likely to take through them. You must have a preliminary design, and that design must be based on meeting certain flood levels over that causeway. So could I ask that the technical services director, who is online, provide us with some update information?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks, Councillor McKibben. Just to give you a bit of an oversight, and quite correctly stated, the original report was on the basis of the defects to the existing low-level causeway and having to replace it. So at 1.2 metre wide culverts, conjointly joined, there's 6 cells in total, which gives us quite a broader area, which obviously fisheries look favourably at when you are putting new structures in tributaries and the like. So on that basis, it would be elevated, not a great deal on the existing structure, but understanding the hydrological behaviour there, whilst I don't have a definite hydrological study undertaken, we know that certain points where it commonly elevates to on the banks, and yes, undoubtedly would still overtop at certain times of high level flows. However, it would be certainly an improvement on what currently exists with the pipes under the low level causeway at the minute. So the 6 box culverts in total, the total structure would be 7.2 metres wide, wide for dual car use, and when you look cross sectionally at it, it would be 2.4 metres wide to allow more water to underpass the actual bridge structure in itself. So we actually have gone down the process of purchasing those box culverts, which are within our work depot at the minute, just pending on that fisheries approval to proceed with that, and again pending the water course in receding waters, given the recent rains.
Councillor McKibben.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of issues. I understand it's 7.2 metres wide, but you referenced 2.4 metres somewhere there, and I wasn't quite clear as to what that related to, because if you say it's 2 cars wide, that means it's at least got to be 6 metres to 7 metres wide across that way. And I didn't understand how many pipes are currently there now and what their size is and what their area and how much we're increasing by. You must know what's there existing, what the diameter of those pipes are as compared to what we're putting in. And I think you indicated that we're going to make it wider than what exists. How much wider and how much higher?
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, certainly the pipes that are there, I don't recollect just off the top of my head the exact diameters, but substantially the undercarriage with the river flow being 2.4 metres wide and 1.2 high is substantially and cross-sectionally a lot more water flow that would underpass the new structure as opposed to the existing. So I don't have that other information in front of me at the minute on those pipes, pipe cells under that existing crossing. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I'm a bit surprised about this. This notice of motion has been on the books for at least a week. I would have thought this information should be at the Technical Services Director's fingertips.
Through the chair, just in response to that query, is this notice of motion seeks for a report to be provided to a future works committee,
Yes.
not to have it on hand now.
All right, I think this motion is substantially unnecessary. The design of the crossing is available at the moment, I understand. We understand what the design of the new crossing is going to be.
Chris is just at one.
Indeed. It will have substantially more ability to deal with floodwater. It is basically a replacement of a failed capability in that causeway with a similar but more modern capability. I have no information here as to what an analysis of a hydrological analysis of that particular river and that particular crossing would cost, or how long it would take, or what it may reveal. We have a lot of experience in this council with the floods that occur on that road, and we understand pretty clearly what it takes for it to be made impassable. It would appear that the culverts that we are getting will have a combined width of 7.2 metre of space within which that water could flow, and it'll be at a higher level as well. So I think all the issues except the hydrological issue are available within council at the moment, and frankly I think the risk which would be reduced by any hydrological survey would be very much in the margins. And that's why I think this is an unnecessary motion. Now you have a right to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologise, I didn't speak very well to explain what was behind this motion when I spoke previously. Let's assume that the existing crossing goes underwater a number of times a year. I don't know how often, but they are fairly small pipes. So there would be quite a few occasions when it goes underwater and people coming along wanting to cross would have to go back and around the long way. What I would like to find out is, after this upgrade happens, by how much will that frequency be reduced? So for example, if we were to find that with the proposed size of culvert, the crossing still goes underwater a couple of times a year, I can see residents and ratepayers who go along that road saying, well, we just spent all that money upgrading it. Why didn't we go to the trouble of working out what size was needed to get that frequency down to an acceptable level? Now, a study may not show that. It may show that the proposed size will handle nearly all flows, and it might only go underwater once every large number of years. That's fine, but at the moment we don't know. And just to explain that, my understanding of what the director was saying about the sizes, I think the 7.2 metres is the road width. In other words, the length of the culvert. I think the actual internal culvert size is 2.4 metres, 2 by 1.2, if I understood correctly. So, yeah, anyway, that's why I feel it's worth going through the process of doing an analysis, which is not a big job, before the construction commences.
So what does that analysis, what cost does that incur?
Not very much. It's not a very big task. I would have thought it could be done in-house, but if not, it is a relatively small project for a consultant to look at the catchment, come up with typical frequencies of certain flows and how often that flow would exceed the proposed culvert size.
Through the chair, we wouldn't have data on how many times that the Noons Hill crossing goes across that
No, I was only guessing, but I think it would be a number of times a year. because there's more cover.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but water going across a culvert and people being able to access across that culvert are two completely different things. That's the first thing that I'd raise. So there are a number of things there that we would need to consider as part of doing this assessment. That's my commentary.
Yeah.
He's had right to reply,
Yeah.
so that means the motion gets put.
Well, yeah, okay.
So I am now putting the motion that the report be provided as outlined on item 10.01. All in favour? Against? Is your hand up?
I was in favour.
You're in favour? So what's that? I couldn't see.
Against this, so I think it's 6-3.
6-3. So the motion
You
is.
can ask him.
Can you just put your hands up again for those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4.
And
And Andrew McKibben, you against?
Yes.
Yes. The motion is lost. So moving on to item 11.01. Central New South Wales Joint Organisation Board meeting. Recommendation is council note the report from the recent Central New South Wales Joint Organisation Board meeting and provide a response to the Central West and Arana Transport Plan, including the Plan Order 2. Use population planning assumptions that mirror a lived experience in region and make provision for a longer term delivery of a safe, swift link between Sydney and the Central West of New South Wales. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hayden? Sorry, you put your hand up first.
Andrew's moving it.
Okay, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to be able to move this recommendation. And in moving it, I would congratulate the Mayor in being appointed the Deputy Chair of the Central West Joint Organisation. I think that puts Oberon in very good stead to have a very good person to promote our position on that joint organisation. And I also know the Mayor of Cabon, Kevin Beattie, so I'm also very pleased to see that he's acting as the chair. So we have a strong team to lead that joint organisation. And I read with interest the delegates' report, and I noted in making some comments to Mayor Kellam about item 2B in particular, the safe swift link and how it seems to have dropped off the New South Wales government's radar at this stage, with their thinking that the 4 million from Medlow Bath to the base of Mount Victoria would solve the problem. I think the recent issues with the closure of the Bells line of road due to floods, the problems to the east of Mount Victoria with the road being reduced to 1 lane, and there being traffic jams of up to 9 hours from Oberon and Bathurst and Orange back to Sydney and from Sydney, which are still continuing, which I personally have experienced. So I suppose I have to say that I have a declaration of interest there, Mr. Mayor. And the problems currently with the train line and the various landslides, if anything, illustrates why there should be a tunnel under the mountains. I think the current situation illustrates aptly why there should be a tunnel right through the mountains. And I would ask that obviously the joint organisation continues on this path of a safe, swift, and could I say reliable link, because a reliable link is what we really require as well. I have known people who left Oberon at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, taking till 11 p.m. to get back to Sydney. So, you know, it has been rather diabolical. So on the basis of all that, I am very happy to move the recommendations that council note the report from the Central New South Wales JO board, and they provide a response to the Central Western Oriented Transport Plan as referenced in 2A and B of the recommendation.
Councillor Hayden?
Yes, it's a very comprehensive report, and congratulations to yourself, Mr. Mayor, on your appointment as the chair. And
Deputy Chair.
that's it. Oh, Deputy Chair.
Thank you. I'd just like to make a couple of comments on 2A and 2B. We have lived in the Central West and anywhere in rural New South Wales. The population assumptions that are used by the New South Wales government do not reflect the lived experience or the quantified experience from census. They assume that most small towns are declining in population, and even a lot of regional towns, except for the headline ones like Mudgee or Orange, are also either stagnant or declining. And that is patently wrong. And they are being taken, the New South Wales government has been taken to task by local government New South Wales on that very issue. The second one is that the safe, swift link between Sydney and the Central West is important. Unfortunately, the New South Wales state government has abandoned the strategic planning space by not allowing, or sorry, by disposing of land in the vicinity of Currajong, which would have provided the link between an enhanced Bells Liner Road and the M7. We're now left with I'll say a good tunnel probably between somewhere around Midlow Bar through to the bottom of Mount Victoria. But what it doesn't do is provide anything for the rest of the Great Western Highway down to the M4. And being slightly OC on my last trip down, I counted the number of traffic lights there are between Katoomba and the M4, and there's 28. There are also 4 school zones, and there are also numerous changes of speed limits. And I suspect that in 20 years' time, that particular stretch of road will bear a striking resemblance to Parramatta Road. And it is not a safe, a swift, or a secure link. Now, the options are limited, and I have to agree with Councillor McKibben that a tunnel is one, but it's going to, we have to first, the JA first has to make sure that the state government recognises that it is leaving a legacy of absolutely atrocious transport links from the Central West and Far West through to Sydney. Any other comments? Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I also ran into someone that had trouble getting back the other day. But this should push our case to have a better bridge over the Abercrombie and the other crossing further up, Curra crossing. And maybe this person was talking to me, he thought of coming around through Canberra to come home to Oberon. You don't come all that way.
I spoke to someone who did that last weekend.
Yeah. But you've always got the problem of the Abercrombie. There is Fire Trail 13 that only requires 22 culverts and you sit on top of the range. So we need the government to get off their bum, stop talking like Mr. Farraway does about these tunnels. He's on the road air the other day. Tunnels won't be in my lifetime. So we need action now. You can build bridges in 12 months and we need someone to go down this Fire Trail 13, which sits on top of the range as an alternative to get over the west. It might be a boost road and like the Abercrombie Road was. But yeah, we need to get those people on the ground and have a look at stop talking.
Thank you for that, Councillor McCarthy. And if you could show me on a map at some stage in the next few
I'm happy
days,
to take you on the
where
GM
Fire
down
Trail 13 is, I would love to see.
Middle Fire Trail.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Seeing no more comments, I put the motion recommendation. All in favour? Passed. Page 21, item 1102, Upper Macquarie County Council meeting of 11th of February 2022. Recommendations that the report, item 1102, is received as information. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Happy to second.
Councillor Hayden, Councillor White. Councillor Hayden.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm happy to move this report, and it's quite comprehensive. I've noticed some of the comments in regards to the weeds, and there's been quite a few weeds popping up everywhere that haven't been seen in quite a few years in the area. So anyway, I'm happy to move that.
Councillor Watt.
And I'm happy to second it. Thank you. I found it a very constructive meeting, and I'm well aware of the problems as somebody who drives around the countryside and has land myself, but I'm encouraged by the approach of Upper Macquarie County Council. So happy to be part of it.
Thank you. And congratulations to Councillor McKibben, who's now the chair of the Upper Macquarie County Council. Means we'll get excellent weed service in Oberon for the
I might have to plead a declaration of interest, Mr. Mayor.
Well done, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Any
Mayor.
other comment? No, I've put the motion that this item report 1102 is received as information. All in favour? Motion is passed. All right, committee reports, item 1201. It's the Oberon Youth Council and recommendations that council receive this report, item 1201 as information. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mover is Councillor Graham and seconder Councillor Trimbath. Councillor Graham.
It's a good report of what the Oberon Youth Council have been doing. It mentions in here that they were going to have a planning day, which they have done, and they were very keen to plan for the next couple of years, really. And their theme, their focus theme is going to be well-being, which was very topical, I think. They did a good job.
Just like to comment that they're a great group of young people. They're very engaged. They've got some really exciting ideas, which is really nice to see because of their youth. They're very keen on the community hub, and actually in the background have been having chats with various people about how that could be used by them, which was really interesting. I think sometimes you just don't know what they're doing, but in the background in their own little chats, they've really jumped on that idea of having something available for them, the space. And yeah, just in general, I think there's a lot of good things that are going to come from this group of youth councillors in the coming years.
Any other comments from anyone? I'd just like to back up both the comments about the quality of the youth council members. There are some exceptional young people in that group. I put the recommendation that the council receive item 1201 as information. All in favour? Against? Motion is passed unanimously. Item 1202 on page 27, the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting. And the recommendation is that council receive report 1202 as information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Mover and seconder. Councillor Watt. And seconder, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Watt.
Yes, I'd like to endorse the report. It looks like a comprehensive report of a fairly wide range of activities, and as we can see, a very important committee. So,
Councillor McCarthy.
You know, I understand it. It's a, what do you call it, detailed report. The only thing I can't understand from the police point of view, though, is when the police attend a road accident and someone's gone through a fence or something like that, they believe that they're in no obligation to go and notify the landowner that their fence is torn and the stock come out. I just can't understand this, and it needs bringing up at this. It could save someone's life. That there's been two occasions, one on the O'Connell Road and one on Losemount Road, that the police attended both of them. The fence was torn and they feel they're on no obligation to notify the landowner. So I think that needs brought up at the next one, that it should be a part of their procedure.
Well, we'll at least find out why it isn't.
Yep.
And the general manager's taking note that right now to bring it up at the next LEMC. Any other comments or questions? All right, I'll move the motion. Sorry, I'll put the motion that the council received the report 1202 as information. All in favour? Passed unanimously. 33, the traffic advisory local committee meeting, item 1203. The recommendation is that council receive report 1203 as information. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
The report speaks for itself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's comprehensive.
Any other comments? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, and that, depending on the answer, that may lead to moving an amendment. I sent an email to the general manager just asking.
Sorry, what are you going to move an amendment on? The recommendation is the council receive report 1203 as information. That's the that's the motion.
Yes, and my amendment, if I do move an amendment, would be to add a part 2. And so the question is a procedural one, and you would have seen the email that I sent concerning the requirement that council actually pass a resolution for any decision that the Traffic Advisory Committee is only an advisory committee and cannot approve regulatory devices, and I think that would extend to approving events of the nature of the North Shore Sporting Car Club rally, and I referred to the relevant clause in the guidelines that make it clear that it is not sufficient for just to note the decision of the TELB, that it does require a council resolution. Could I seek some advice on that from the general manager?
Yeah, so I have responded to your email.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it was late, so I apologise.
Oh, late today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So ultimately, the way that councillors traditionally work through these resolutions is that TALC will make a let's call it a decision in principle. Those decisions in principle are always supported by the council unless otherwise raised through a council decision or through an amendment by council. In this instance, if there is any significant decision that you want to bring forward as a recommendation on its own, then you have the power to do that under this provision. So the way that the minutes are provided, how they've been read, is that there are a number of actions that we put out and we deal with actions. But what I've indicated to you in my response was, if there are recommendations that TALC want to make to guide the decisions of council, we will change the way that the reporting mechanisms undertaken, where TALC will then be given a recommendation power to council. It's not a statutory obligation, it's just a recommendation, and then council will determine those recommendations as they see fit at the next available meeting. So traditionally what they've done is the minutes have a overarching support by the TALC committee, which in turn gets filtered through the council through a set of minutes, and council endorse the minutes on the basis of the recommendations made by the committee.
I'll have to have a look at your late email. That is not my understanding of the way the process is supposed to work. It's certainly not the way it worked back when I was involved.
We mustn't go back to past history.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying that from my reading of the guidelines for local traffic committees, it does state that all proposals recommended by the local traffic committee must still be formally approved by the elected council. And in my view, simply receiving or noting the minutes, I don't think does that sufficiently.
And through endorsement of the minutes, the way that over the period of time that I've been working in this space, that is an adequate way of council endorsing the recommendations of those minutes that were tabled at the TALC meeting. If council were of a mind that they want to pull out individual recommendations, or equally, should a revision of what you believe that you want to be able to table to council wants to change, I'm more than happy to talk to people about changing that into an action / recommendation to council type scenario, where they're not minutes, it's a report back to council that outlines what they want council to resolve. This way it gives, the way that it's been presented is supposed to give council an understanding of what was talked about, a resolution. If council themselves had a problem with it, they could raise it at the meeting.
Well, I'm certainly not.
All right, I'm going to stop the discussion here because this is something that needs to be taken elsewhere because it's not going to be decided right now.
Right.
And I'm going to put the motion.
Sorry, could I make a comment?
All right,
If you're about to,
I'm about to put the motion on.
yeah, I had my hand up before you said that. but
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you the opportunity to do
Okay,
so.
thank you. I'd just like to thank Councillor McCarthy for raising the issue of vehicles not slowing down at stop signs. But I'd comment that it's a complex issue. It's primarily an issue between police and landholders. Local land service, unfortunately, is not able to enforce those requirements, but it is something where landholders need to be better educated because they can't just put up stop signs and in dangerous situations and expect traffic to be careful of that. But also traffic needs to be aware of the risk of travelling stock. So it's an area I'll pursue because a number of farmers have raised it with me. So thank you.
Good observation. I'll put the motion that council receive report 1203 as information. All in favour? Against? No. All right, reports for decision. Item 1301. Development application for the community hub at 72 Dart Street and 13 Fleming Street, Oberon. Recommendation. This is on page 40. That council approved development application 10.2020.91.1 for a community hub at lots 3 and 4 in DP 546753, being known as 72 Dart Street and 13 Fleming Street, Oberon, in accordance with section 416 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979, and conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. The development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environment Plan of 2013. The development complies with the Oberon Local Environment Plan of 2013. The development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably. A division be called in accordance with section 375A of the Local Government Act of 1993. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McKibben. Seconder, Councillor Tremabath. Councillor McKibben.
You're on mute, Councillor McKibben.
I think it needs to be realised by everyone that this is a development application. It's not talking about funding. We're not talking about any other issues that have to be considered by council. And in fact, there is another decision to be made by council that may reflect on that, which is subsequent to this motion. This is purely stating that we have a plan and we've put a development application through. And I note, and I would ask the the planning director to correct me if I'm wrong, but it is always possible that as a result of the second stage of this process, which is partly considered in a following resolution, proposed motion, that the design of this building may change and will therefore may be subject to an amendment to this approved DA. However, this at least provides us with an ambit situation that we know is approvable on the basis that if we proceed with the hub, that this gives us the footprint and the basic design and the parameters to which will apply to the proposed revised hub. I know there are a number of concerns in the community, and I also have concerns in relation to cost, but as I say, they're not the subject of this motion. They are more to do with the following resolution and actions by council, I'd assume, at future meetings, not this one. So they shouldn't be taken into consideration in applying this DA. And as I said, there is a possibility, I assume, and I'd ask the planning director to correct me if I'm wrong, that if there have to be amendments on the basis of cost or other issues that are subsequently raised, those amendments could be considered quite expeditiously on the basis that they would be amendments to an existing approved DA. So on that basis, I am very happy to propose the recommendations as listed there in relation to the development approval for the hub project.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Trembath.
Thank you. I agree that we accept the DA application, but also, as Andrew has stated, Councillor McKibben has stated that due consideration has been given in the second stage with regards to cost and potential size, and it's the two will sort of come together later. And as a new council, not all of us have been across everything regarding the hub, and we are listening to what is being said, but we have to take on board the information that we have prior with all the consultations that happened. But I do think we should approve the DA.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question for the, probably for the Director of Development. As best as I can work out, in relation to the parking for the development, it talks about extending the angle parking in Dart Street, and it appears to me, from what I could tell from the attached plans, that there's 2 extra spaces on Dart Street going closer to the Fleming Street intersection. And I just want to point out that this was an issue that came up years ago when that angle parking was first installed, and it was constructed as close as it could be to that corner without breaching the Australian road rules. And I would just like to ask that that be checked. It's possible the rules may have changed. It's possible my memory may have been mistaken, but I suspect that those 2 bays cannot be constructed without breaching that rule. And the other part of the question is whether the extension of the angle parking is included in the tender price to be carried out by the contractor if we do go ahead with the project, or would it be done by council as a separate item from the contract? Thank you. That's all.
Through the chair, Councillor Tucker, I can answer the first part of the question, and I'll defer to the second part to the general manager. There was a traffic impact assessment done by one of the consultants through our project managers, who assessed the angle parking and the consideration of looking at additional numbers. My understanding is that they have undertaken an assessment against the current standard. However, I can take that on notice and come back to you with some further advice in that regard.
2008 it was, but it may have been updated in the last few years.
In terms of the whether it's been included in the tender, I'm not sure. So.
Through the chair, I'll defer to our project manager in this instance to be able to give an understanding of that particular question.
Through the chair, to your first question, all of the design will be done in accordance with Australian standards. So thank you for, you were talking about the corner of Dart and Fleming Street, I presume.
Yes, although it's not quite Australian standards, it's a legal thing rather.
That's appropriate.
Yeah.
So, the second matter, there is, as part of the budget, some work in kind that council will undertake. We're in negotiations with council as to how that will fit in. The actual discussion regarding those extra 2 spots was post-tender. So that is a matter for discussion at the moment.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hayden.
Yeah, I've got a couple of concerns in regards to the roof. The pitch is one of the concerns, but also the connecting section between the Hooper building and the hub. on the 6th page in one of the diagrams, you can actually see how the Hooper Centre comes across and then it actually drops down another roofing section up slightly, drops across and up. That's leaving a huge gaping gap for a whole big snow load to fill that up and add a lot of weight and pressure to the entire building and underneath. And I don't think that that is basically suitable for our climate in that regard. Also, why are there so many exterior cladding designs on the one building? You have blocks, then you have bricks, then you have dark bricks, then you have recycled bricks, and then you have iron and tin and the timber. So I'm a little taken aback with the amount of external cladding for one building. And then again, there's the size of the block and the size of this building, and taken into consideration what is already there, it's adding only another smaller space. And my questions, which I'm asking the question, is why are we looking at the final draft of what is going into this DA, and is this roof going to be the same? That's just, yeah, sorry. I'm lost now. But I can't visualize that being acceptable.
So through the chair, I'm happy to defer to the project manager in this instance, but first in regards to snow, we have no option but to comply with the relevant snow loading requirements for the climate in which we live in. That's a non-negotiable. So when you talk about areas, if that is what the detailed design comes back and says that's what it's going to be, it needs to comply with the appropriate standards for snow and wind loading.
So the gap here, let's say you have this big height here, you have a height here, and then it all drops down into here. So
that's unfortunately, when you can't use box gutters, there's some design elements that you need to put into consideration. But more than happy to defer to Chris to give you an overview on the things you've asked.
Thank you. So through the chair, thank you for your questions. You've discussed the roof pitch, the Hooper connection and the snow load. So all of the roof designs have considered snow load all the way through. Engineering designs have considered how the snow is going to get away, the appropriate design of the structure underneath and so on. So the DA, as I think Councillor McKibben mentioned, is a point in time. We do, and Council will be aware that we are looking at the roof design and how we may save some money in that space, and have done so already. That will all be considered in the design of the roof on an ongoing basis. And the snow load is something being a local I've mentioned at length during design meetings, and the engineers have certainly taken into account. The movement of snow across the roof is an issue that we will need to deal with and have dealt with. So Council can be confident that the design is appropriate for that environment. The extent of the cladding finishes you mentioned, architectural design will often introduce numbers of finishes to articulate a building. We are limited by two things. One is the existing Hooper building and the bricks that are on that, and the existing library building and the bricks that are on that. There are different finishes in between, and they articulate entrances and various other portions of the building. And an architectural feature has been introduced with those, and that's where that really sits. You're suggesting that we're adding just a smaller space What we're adding is functional space. There is certainly part of the building, the Hooper building and the main body of the library is staying. We are demolishing other areas, particularly the old 1950s building, which isn't terribly functional and doesn't give us a response to the requirements of the brief. And so, yes, they are being demolished. And the space that's been added is very much driven from a functional requirement, rather than just looking at the actual addition or otherwise at square metres. The final draft DA, I'll come back to Councillor McKibben's comments that the DA will be submitted. If it's approved tonight, then we go forward with confidence that we have a project that we can actually work forward on, that there is an approval in place that we can then further develop. Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy?
Can I just have an understanding? We're approving the DA for the hub at the moment only. What's before us as a plan may not be the final result. Is that correct?
And that's why there is a possibility that there'll be a amendment to this DA.
Yes, and that's what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think we might be putting the cart before the horse in approving the DA when we haven't settled on design and we haven't got the final costings. I understand the time constraints, but yeah, I have concerns that this is being rushed a little bit, but maybe I'm wrong.
Through the chair, I can only say that this proposal has been developed on over the last 2 years in substantial consultation with all parties. We've got to a point in time where a number of resolutions have led to the development of this project, and this is where we're at this point in time. I don't think it's been rushed. I just want to validate Councillor McKibben's comments, because I think he asked for some clarification if he was wrong by the planning director, and he wasn't, so no one said anything. But this is a DA. The construction certificate has yet to be even lodged with council. That construction certificate, should this DA be approved, would need to meet the general requirements of that DA. And if it doesn't, then we need to look at modification to that DA. And that is a standardised process across the board, especially in this instance where you're looking to meet the requirements of a brief that you've asked the project manager to put in place.
That doesn't mean that the construction consent has to come back to council.
Through the chair, a final design will come back to council for their sign off. So yes, it will.
Thank you.
Councillor McKibben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like make one comment, and people have probably noticed it above the recommendation and just before the photograph on page 38, the first paragraph. I think the reference to 10 a.m. should be to 10 p.m. and that's consistent with what is stated later in the report.
Great.
I don't think we'll be closing at 10 a.m. in the morning. And we've actually said we're having functions till 10 p.m. Yes.
Now, am I right in thinking if we support this DA, that then gives approval for the hub to continue to be erected? And do we have any future say in whether this project goes ahead or does not go ahead?
Through the chair, that is absolutely within your control.
Right now?
No, and ongoing. The DA simply is a use application that says that if you want to progress this matter to a design phase, you need to at least have some plans in place that allow that final design to occur.
So we should have basically in front of us what the project is going to be and how it's going to be designed and what it's going to look like. And so far, we keep getting these changes. We have these discussions and we have these changes continuously. And then there's the budget restraints and everything separately on top of that. So you've basically clarified a few things. Yeah.
Through the chair, the budget is the thing that's going to finalise the design.
Yes, but
let's go with that.
Even if we all approve this, this is just a basic.
This is the use. This is the use application and allows the project manager to advance the project.
Councillor McKibben, I'm going to see if there's any other questions or comments and then give you the right to reply.
Thank
Any
you.
Anyone else got comments, suggestions? No? All right, Councillor McKibben, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd just like to reiterate that this is the, as I said, the development application. We all note, and I know we have to treat these obviously separately, but there is a motion that follows this motion in which Central West Project Management is recommending a course of action which may result, as I said, in changes and amendments to this DA. I just want to make it clear that this, yes, this is a step, but council gets the final say on the hub and the amount we spend on the hub, but that is a further progression of the next notice of motion that we are going to consider that follows this one, I believe, in the next item to be considered in business. This is just saying, all right, we're approving a design that's approved, dependent on what happens in that next process and what happens at the end of the process envisaged by the next notice of motion. As I said before, and I reiterate, we may have to amend this. But if we do go down that track and we do go ahead with the pub and there has to be amendments and we approve that, then those amendments, as I understand, depending on what they are, should be relatively easily to be accepted, and those amendments could be considered in their own right without having to consider the total design concept completely, which has already been done under this approval of the DA. So I just want to make it clear that there are a number of more processes that I think should allay Councillor Hayden's concerns, and they will reflect the further processes that will go down the track following the motion we next consider. And I would imagine that, and I think it's envisaged that in April and May, we will be in a better position to look at the other issues such as cost constraints, etc. So this is purely the planning approval for a project, and I would envisage that there will be amendments to this resulting from the work that Central West Project Management is doing as they've envisaged in the next notice of motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm putting the motion as detailed on page 40. All in favour? Against? Councillors Hayden, McCarthy and McKechnie are against. The motion is passed. All right, page 55, item 1302, Community Hub Procurement. The recommendation is that council enter a 1-month exclusive engagement period with Bartha Proprietary Limited to further explore cost savings and design refinements for the Community Hub project. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McKibben. Seconder. Councillor Trembath. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this has been alluded to in the previous recommendation. I think where we are, and we all know where we are in relation to the cost of projects and everything else is highlighted in this report. We all know that building costs are increasing rapidly. So in the nature of where we are currently, I think what is envisaged is obviously a very sensible proposal, and that we will, at the end of this 1 month period, know where we are with at least one of our tenderers and whether we can come to an agreement and what the baseline cost of this project is going to be, which we then as a council will have to consider what we do with and whether we go ahead. Bearing in mind, and I would reiterate this to councillors, that we have slightly over $3 million that is allocated to this project. We really can't, we cannot allocate it to other projects, and we cannot, and if we don't spend it, we lose it. So I think we have to go through this process that is envisaged in this paper and find out exactly where we are, and if there's a delta, what that delta is, and how we handle that, or what we do. But that process, but we're not at that point yet, and that is what is envisaged. We have to know where we are, and this is going to provide us with the information so that we can then get to that position. So on that basis, I fully support this recommendation, and I look forward to the updated report at the April meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to move this recommendation.
Councillor Tremblay.
Yes, I support this recommendation. I know that there's a period of time where we have to wait to get to the next stage, but as Councillor McKibben has stated, we do have money, and that this project has, and the General Manager stated as well, that this has been going for 2 years, and a lot of consideration has been given to the budget and what's going to be allocated and how it's going to be used and how we're going to get to the right place and ensure that what we provide to the community meets with their expectations and reasonably within budget, considering sort of what's happening in the marketplace with costs. And the longer we take to make our decisions regarding this, the more it's going to change. So we do need to move forward and be ready in a month's time to see what can be done. A design is a design, and architects will always design the biggest and the best, because that's, well, you know, they would like to always give you sort of a great end result. But considering some of the restrictions around budget that we've got, I'm sure that we can come to a place where we do get a great community hub centre in Oberon, but within our budget. I support it fully.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the motion, but I do want to stress that doesn't mean that I will necessarily be supporting any decision to go ahead with the project, because that is going to depend on funding, which is, like others have said, is the biggest remaining hurdle that we all need to be clear about, is exactly what it's going to cost and exactly where that money is coming from. But if we were to decide today not to even give that 1 month extension, I think we are opening ourselves up to criticism that well, you don't know that it would have been over budget because you didn't allow that extra time for those negotiations and design changes. And so I'm willing to allow that time and for those processes to happen and see what can be achieved, and then consider how the funding works out when it comes back to council at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm happy to give the extra month. And we all should consider what was in the Weber brief, and one of them is the semi-kitchen and all the rest of it. And I don't think when we get a price back that we should be leaving the doors off those division areas. Those division areas to be operational need those doors on. So what was presented before isn't the hub as far as I'm concerned. We were shown that those 3 areas can be utilised separate, and the costing of that has to be in the building. I'm sorry, but you can't leave the doors off to get it under budget as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendation to go the extra month. But I think what we should be looking at in this time is some major cost cutting measures. And I think some of the ones that stand out fairly clearly are move the CTC back to the Vic, where there's ample room and was quite functional there. I'm not sure why it was moved, but anyway, I think that's one area that we can reduce the size of the building. And the function centre needs to be the second thing that needs to go, because it's not needed. We have the Uniting Church Hall, we have the Malachi Hall, we have the Showground Hall, Black Springs Hall. You know, we've got function centres in and around town. We've got plenty of places that can cater for up to anywhere from 50 to 350 to 500 people. So I think those two areas are major concern cost-wise. It'll be interesting to see what the final cost comes back, but my experience was in project management is that it's easier to take one big cost out than it is to find 100 small ones and cut corners that way. And I think there's two major concerns there that we could reduce, plus the kitchen, a few other pieces. Cut the cost back down. If we have to refund money, we have to refund it, but we can't go over. I won't support going over.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, looking at this brief, it's asking for an extension for another month. And whilst we've been elected to council, we've discussed the hub project several times. And with the extraordinary amount of money that it's gone over in its costings, only to have another meeting and for a savings of $1 million. So looking at it wholly, I agree with what Councillor McKechnie has suggested as well, that there should not be a cent over what it was originally agreed with the funding. And yeah, that's my stand on it.
Mr. Mayor, I think what we're looking at this recommendation is giving a month to negotiate with the one thing, nothing to do with anything else. So I would support that recommendation.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Anyone wants to speak for or against? All right, I'll put the motion that the council enter a 1 month exclusive arrangement period with BARPA Proprietary Limited to further explore cost savings and design requirements for the community hub project.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether Andrew wants to speak.
Righto, I'm supporting the motion.
Just waving his hand.
Wait till I say all in favour before you put your hand up.
I don't want to be missed.
All right, all in favour. That's unanimous. All right. 58. Page 57, item 1303. Section 356 funding request. Recommendations that council approve the request from the Oberon Arts Council to repurpose a 2021-22 section 356 donation of $1,500 for artistic support to the Blue Tree project. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Graham and Councillor McKechnie. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The comments here outline the issue. I think very fine line, the difference of what the Arts Council want to do with that money. Originally, it was for signage for artworks in the common, and now they're wanting to use signage for the Blue Tree, which I guess can be extended to an artwork as well. So there's really not a lot of difference. Why they haven't used the money is because they couldn't run the workshops and things that they needed to before through COVID. So it's pretty straightforward, really.
Thank you. Councillor McKechnie.
No, as Councillor Graham said, Mr. Mayor, that's pretty straightforward. No problem supporting it.
Okay. Anyone else have an opinion? All right, I move the motion that the council approve the request of the Oberon Arts Council to repurpose the 21-22 section 356 donation of $1,500 for artistic support to the Blue Tree project. All in favour? Against? Councillor McCarthy against, passed 8-1. Item 1304, the O'Connell Recreation Ground Master Plan. The recommendation is that council adopt the O'Connell Recreation Ground Master Plan from Outscape dated the 2nd of March 2022, drawing number 1 of 1, revision B. I have a mover and a seconder. Mover is Councillor McCarthy, seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Trembath. Councillors, there is a copy of that particular drawing on the. Councillor McCarthy.
Yes, I'm happy with the plan, but we need to know, the list of which stages are going to happen with the funding. Now, if you have a look on page 60, you've got completed activity, which is the fence. The other parts commenced. Now, the picket fence, I understand the community wanted it knocked out. And on the, then you got the car parking, landscaping, seating, accessible toilets, change room. Doesn't the community really want the change room and the thing in this one big shearing shed, or for sake of a better word, the meetings I went to, that's what they want. So we need to know what the stages are. We want to know, I was lucky enough to talk to engineer, and they're talking about putting turf on the centre of the field. Are we turfing it, or are we going to sow it down? Like, if we can't support it, the turf and the irrigation, are we going to irrigate it without going on the centre of the field and do the perimeter? These are things that I think council need to know, and what costing is. And yeah, I'm happy to move it, but I need to know a list of priorities. So what's been prioritised there comes up to 838,000, which gives you 220,000 left. But like the toilets, well, I don't want that. And then in this plan, if you go across to there, it shows that they want 2 large 120,000 litre or 26,000 gallon tanks buried in the ground. Or is that, where does that fit in? Is that a part of the irrigation? And you know, we need to know a list. So I'm happy to support the that plan, but we need to know a list of priority where actions are going to happen.
So through the chair, in order to develop the funding, we had to put a program together. Now, we also understand that in the evolution of the O'Connell master plan, that there's been a number of recommendations and changes made by the architect and the community in relation to this matter. And we are also lodging applications with the funding authorities to change the scope of that funding and giving support for the scope of that funding on the basis of we're assuming that this gets support, this current plan is supported by council. In relation to the turfing requirements, we note that as part of one of the funding there was an allocation for a picket fence, which was undertaken 18 months ago. We know our community doesn't want that, so that's one of the things that we're looking to amend. And one of those things that we're looking to amend it with is, well, instead of seeding the cricket pitch or the rec ground, why would we look at turfing it if it's a like for like value in relation to getting it up and running at a quicker rate than what it would have otherwise been if we just seed it and let it naturally sow. So there are a number of things, but what the master plan does is give you an overarching plan which we work with in order to meet the expectations of the community. very similar to the common master plan. So yes, we'll be working on a list of priorities, but there's some that we've already executed, being the development of the cricket fields themselves. So we've also implemented some car parking landforms. So there are some non-negotiables in how we develop the program. But yeah, we're more than happy to bring back a list of priorities, because the priorities will be based on the funding allowances that are being given through council resolution for this money to be for this money to be provided for this project.
Mr. Mayor, what I'm asking for is in simple terms and not big words. What takes place next? We've got the cricket pitch and the football field. I'm asking that it should be given a priority list of what's next and what needs the funding.
I think Councillor McCarthy, that priority list is actually pretty much covered by table 1.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, the master plan goes a lot further than that, but that doesn't mean it's funded.
No, well, see, if you go to the second block, it says cricket picket fence. Well, that's been knocked out, hasn't it, by the community?
Correct. So the master plan
Well,
doesn't have a
it's still in.
fence.
So if you're reading that as a layman, it's still in.
So as I've indicated, councillor, that's why we're being on the front foot trying to get rid of that, but still securing the funds to develop the O'Connell master plan.
You're missing the point now.
No, wait on.
What I'm getting at is if you're going to go down the thing of putting irrigation and things in, do you need those other 2 tanks to support the irrigation? We need to know that that's where the money's going to be spent.
So through the chair, we're already looking at the irrigation design for the project now, which will determine what you're required in that space.
Councillor McKibben, we haven't got to the seconder yet.
Right, fine.
Hands down for a little bit, and I'll get to you.
Councillor McKibben, I can see you. I'm seconding the master plan, and I know, having worked very closely on this, that this final master plan clearly reflects exactly what the community wants. Yeah, the changes that they requested. There's only one thing that they have been focused on, and that is the community hall and how to incorporate some of the build, be it the amenities block and the change rooms, that when the design is done, that it is taken into consideration that the final will have a community hall and how to bring that all together and not have an amenities block being, a star feature in the ground for many years. So that was just at the meeting last night. They were very pleased to know that this was coming. It's giving them everything that we need down there. And yeah, I think it's great. And I do hear what Councillor McCarthy is saying about the table, how it does still have that the fence in there, but most of the community know that that's no longer in there. And the stages, I've already put out notices to alert people that the next stage after all the earthworks are done, which I must say were done at an amazing pace, that the irrigation and drainage was the next big issue that was being considered. So that's being pushed out to the community to make them aware that that's happening. But and then the next stage was going to be amenities and the basics, and the final stage would not be the community hall. And I've again communicated that to them, that we need another round of funding to get to that stage, because that's another over and above the funding that we've applied. But I definitely second the master plan. I think it's great. Katrina's done a really good job, and I think we'll get great feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Trimbath. Councillor McKibben.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I too am very pleased to support this recommendation of the master plan. However, I would make a couple of observations, and I do understand, as I think Councillor Trimbath also said, Councillor McCarthy's concerns. And obviously some of these applications for funding were put in before the full plan was endorsed, with great community support across all sections of the O'Connell community. And I think it was, apart from anything else, this has been a hugely unifying exercise. in that community. What I think, what I believe we need, well, there are several observations. First is, I think with the current environmental conditions, I'm not sure why would we be looking at turf. Having sown grass seed in the last year and a half, I've never seen such a good strike of grass seed. And I would imagine the same would probably occur on the Connell recreation ground if we were able to sow that grass seed this year, that we'd have an amazing, amazing playing surface without the necessity to spend money on turf. That's just an observation I'd make from the last 18 months of sowing grass seed, both for lawns and for pasture. But I do think that we should, and I would propose an amendment or a part 2 to this recommendation, and the amendment would be that council at the April meeting provide us with a staging in detail of the program of the intended for the intended use of all the grant funds specified in table 1, so that we actually understand in greater specificity what is to be done for each of for the total amount, and how it's going to be staged. And I do think that in respect to the accessible toilets, change room and lockable storage, we should also get some detail in relation to how that's to be constructed so that it can be incorporated in the overarching shearing shed design.
Right, yeah, Councillor McKibben, can you just articulate your proposed amendment again so that
The amendment 2 is that council provide, that council is provided at the April 2022 meeting a detailed staging of the project, detailing how current grant funds are to be expended on each of the stages of the project, including details of the, I think it's the toilet block and amenities, and how they are to be constructed so they can be incorporated into the yet to be funded, what do we call it? What is it? The total building, the hall. The hall, or the, yes, the hall grandstand.
Yeah. Through the chair, rather than a report being brought back, why don't council staff, through their architect, just provide detailed site plan showing the stages of the common master plan that we have approved? I don't think you need a report to council. We're happy to go back to the architect and try and get her to outline where the stages are, rather than a report back. Does that help?
I thought it's probably past, now that the architect's done their work, I thought that as we're project management, we would be establishing how the money is spent for each of the stages. I think we have the design. So I would assume the technical services department, or who is project management, say, all right, we've got the design. This is the broad range of things we've asked in the grants. So from those, we're doing the irrigation, we're doing, the drainage, the earthworks has been done, the drainage and irrigation are going to be done. We estimate it's going to cost that amount. That means it's going to leave this amount. That amount's going to be spent on this, on the car park, the landscaping, the seating. This will leave this amount, the accessible toilets, change room and lockable storage, bearing in mind that that's going to be part of an overarching grandstand hall. This is how it is going to be constructed so that that can be incorporated. This will leave this much money left, and this is what it's intended to do with that remaining money, if there's any.
I understand what you're asking for. I'm just thinking of an easier way of providing it. That's all.
I don't mind how it's provided, but I don't know that the architect's going to do that. I thought that's really, we've got the architect plans now. we had a broad brush at the staging, which was basically to get our grants in. But I think now we need more specificity. And again, you know, I've made the comment, we talked about this, you know, I don't think we, and this is an operational matter, or maybe it's a council matter, that I don't know why we're turfing with the current environmental conditions. If we don't get a decent strike of grass seed across that ground now, we'll never have.
Councillor McKibben, your proposed amendment is up there on the screen now. Have you got it?
I'll have a look at it.
Take the second detailing for outlining.
Yeah, I think it was just including details, the toilet and amenities block and how they are to be incorporated in the community hall. I think, yeah. I mean, we can have a different sentence after projects. This should include details of the toilet and amenities block and how these will be constructed so they can be incorporated in the community hall concept.
So through the chair, my only comment is that do you want to report back to council, or do you just want to be provided with that?
Look, I'm happy either way, but I note from previous experience, that these need to be noted as recommendations, or they don't get into the actions items that form part of the minutes.
Through the chair, once again, I'm not saying don't have the resolution. I'm saying, do you want a report provided back to council, or do you just want that report be provided?
Oh, the report can be provided. I'm happy with that. Yes.
So it doesn't change your intention of your.
Yep.
So what it should read now is that council provide at the April 2022.
Just take out the April 22 meeting.
Well, I would like it. No,
Council document provided us.
like to come back to the meeting so that we have a date for it to be done.
This detailed staging report to be provided.
Council provide a detailed staging report.
Probably need to have it before the next meeting.
Prior to?
Mr. Mayor,
Prior to the April meeting. April 2022 council meeting.
would it be possible to have the recommendation as number 1 point?
Yep.
And what the proposal is number 2 point, if Councillor Trembath and Councillor McKibben agree?
Well, and that's exactly where I'm going to go as soon as we get the language right in the proposal.
I think I'm happy with that.
That's a detailed staging report.
Yep.
Be provided. Yeah, so just take that outlining out and go to the next outline.
Yep, I'm happy with those changes.
Are you happy to have that as
Point 2.
2? Sorry, 1 and 2.
1 and 2, yes.
All right. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the?
Hang on. You've got to move in a second. We need to do this.
Well, sorry, yes. Yeah. So mover and seconder are happy with what's there now?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'll put the.
No, so the mover and the seconder.
It's not. It's not an amendment if the mover and seconder
have agreed to the
change.
You've agreed to the happy with the wording.
That's it.
So I'll now put the amendment.
Oh.
Once it's italicized.
And we need a 1 and 2.
You can take the first, that out first.
All right, you both agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? That's unanimous. That amendment now becomes the motion.
It was an amendment.
Yeah. So you just.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's vote. Okay. All right. So we now move on to item 1305. Almost 7:30. So rather than start on 1305, we might take a 10-minute break and it can be back at 7:35. Not by that clock. If you can stop recording, please, at this point. Remember that I'm resuming the council meeting at 7:35 with item 1305, Oberon Council Annual Plant Contractor Hire Tender. The recommendation is that council nominate the open tendering method as prescribed in accordance with clause 1668 alpha of the Local Government Regulations 2005 for the provision of plant contractor hire services for the next 12-month period. That is T 2022-3. At the conclusion of the tender period, all information will be assessed and a report will be put to the next available ordinary council meeting seeking endorsement of the annual plant hire contract panel for the 2022-2023 financial year. Do I have a mover and a second? Councillor McKechnie and Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's pretty straightforward. It's a regulatory requirement that we need to follow to get a service that we need. So I think it's straightforward to recommend the report.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Pretty straightforward. Thank you. Just procedural.
Everyone else? Councillor Tucker.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions and concerns about how this contract operates, and it's similar to the gravel supply contract that we discussed last month.
Just a point, we're talking about
yes,
the tendering process,
yes, and
not
that's
how the contract will work.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. I agree with you, and that's why I'm not going to raise those questions now. I will attempt to deal with them out of session.
Okay.
And if I can't get answers to my satisfaction, I'll raise them when they come back for a further review.
Okay. Anyone else to speak on this item? All right, I'll put the motion as recommended in item 1305. All in favour? Passed. Item 1306, the draft Oberon Street Tree Master Plan Public Exhibition. The recommendation is that council place the draft Oberon Street Tree Master Plan on public exhibition from Friday, the 18th of March until Friday, the 29th of April, 2022, after which a further report will be submitted to council outlining submissions and seeking formal endorsement. Do I have a mover? That's Councillor McKibben and a seconder, Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that there's been a lot of hard work by the previous council and this council recently in relation to this. I believe that this will set a very good scene for improving the overall livability and beauty of Oberon and its district. I must say I did go onto the link because I'm haven't got a hard copy, and I did have some difficulties in ascertaining where the changes we discussed previously at the streetscape meeting were adopted by the consultants, but I have to assume they were. It was very hard to read through the link or the portal. But I believe that this, as is outlined in the project objectives, this will enhance the livability and amenity of our town, and it will assist with providing shade to people in summer for shopping and for using our town. And I believe it has a whole lot of advantages, and it sets us a plan for the future so that we don't just plant trees ad hoc. We actually have a plan for each street. So I fully endorse this recommendation and very pleased to be able to move this recommendation to where we've got to with this project.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Watt.
I don't need to say much more than that. We've all had a good look at the plan, and I think it's a wonderful step forward. And obviously going to public consultation is the next step. Just a quick point, I think that should be aesthetic importance in the comment rather than aesthetic. I think aesthetic. So.
Not aesthetic.
But it's both. We're looking to manufacture penicillin as well.
Aesthetic, disciplined and monkish.
Yes,
and anyway, I don't want to get bogged down in that, but I think it should be aesthetic. So yes, I'm happy to second it.
It's the first law.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's definitely Monk Light. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other councillors? Councillor McCarthy?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy we've come up with this plan, but I think these people aren't professional enough in respect that if you have a look on page, I think it's 50, you have a look at bring the trees right up on Dudley Street. And the other night when we spoke about it, they've got the red trees coming in on their O'Connell Road. You can't have them there. You got to have your side distances.
Was that the concept plan where they said this is?
Yeah, well, there's your plan. And even the general manager spoke that, you've got a sign out there. But what happens is the people, when you put this out next, exposed, they believe that's what can happen. And it can't. Like, you've got to have these setbacks for site vision. I'm sorry, but it's not really professional enough.
Well, I suggest we put a note in when it goes on exhibition that the streets, the virtual streetscapes are conceptual only and don't take account of sight lines, etc., or something like that.
Safety provisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's a point well made, Councillor McCarthy. Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion or the recommendation. All in favour? Motion is passed. Moving on to item 1307. Proposed heating upgrade for the independent living units. The recommendation is that council install reverse cycle split systems in units 1 to 4 in Curtis Street and 1 to 12 in Belfer Street. The project funding of $54,000 for the replacement and upgrades to be funded from the 2021-2022 building maintenance budget. I have a mover and seconder. Councillor Hayden and Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I think this is well thought out and it's well needed, and I think it speaks for itself.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, looking at the photographs and knowing the state of the existing systems, I think this is a necessary provision, and it will also mean that the maintenance costs should be reduced, as these will be new systems, and noting that these new reverse cycle split systems are usually far more economical to operate as well. I think it's a necessary replacement project that we have to undertake. So I'm more than happy to second this recommendation in two parts.
Any other councillors? Councillor McCarthy.
Well, I'm happy for this to go ahead. I think that one of the companies putting into this suggested they go on the roof, that's so the water goes in the gutter. I think we've got to have them on the ground because of our alpine climate, and we dig the path that put the drain water across the path. Yeah, I don't agree with them putting them on the roof. So yeah, I'd just like that pass on to the director.
Got that? Yep, noted. Anyone else? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion is passed. Item 1308, the Oberon Sports Grounds Working Party Terms of Reference. Recommendation is that council adopt the draft terms of reference for the Oberon Sports Ground Working Party. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Trembath. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These terms of reference and the establishment of this working party have obviously been a matter that's been considered by council previously. I've read the terms of reference and they seem reasonable, except I would ask that maybe that requires a small amendment in the third line under objective. It says consists of councillors, staff and representatives of within the LGA that may use the community sports complex.
That was representatives of sporting groups.
Okay, so there's some more. Yes, I think that those words are missing. So I could ask, noting that slight amendment, that be made before the terms of reference are endorsed as final terms of reference.
I'm happy with that.
But subject to that, I am more than happy to move the recommendation.
I second the recommendation, and I'm very glad to have this, because being on this working party, you need the guidelines to keep you within your lanes and understanding what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. So good document, and I'm very pleased to have it.
Any other councillors with an opinion? All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous, and the motion is passed. 1309 on page 73, the Code of Meeting Practice. Recommendation is that council place the draft policy 1101 Code of Meeting Practice on public exhibition from Thursday the 17th of March 2022 to Thursday the 5th of May 2022, and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policies be adopted as presented. We'll have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had quite a detailed discussion about this last week, of course, and what's been presented reflects what was generally supported at that meeting. So I support that recommendation.
Yes, it speaks for itself after our lengthy processes of going through the paper. Yes, I'm happy to support this.
Thank you. And I'd just like to congratulate all the councillors. I thought that was an excellent process we had the other week. It was a good discussion. We reached consensus quite quickly on virtually everything. And I think we've got a good draft code of meeting practice. So thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? You, Councillor Graham, were you?
Fine, go straight ahead.
All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous, and the motion has been passed. Item 1310, the Code of Conduct. That council placed the draft Code of Conduct on public exhibition for Thursday, the 17th of March 2022 to Thursday, the 5th of May, 2022, and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policies be adopted as presented. Move and seconded, please. Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this case, there wasn't really any discussion last week because I think the draft code of conduct is exactly the same as the model code of conduct, and I don't think we have any choice in it anyway. So it's just a formality to go through this process and
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, as Councillor Tucker has said, it's a definitive copy basically of the model code of conduct, and we basically quickly read through it all again last week. So yes, I'm quite happy to support this.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor McKechnie.
No,
you're about to put your hand up there. I'll put the motion. All in favour? The motion is 1. All right, 1311, Council Section 355 committees. The recommendation is that Council appoint the community delegates to its Section 355 committees and working parties until September 2023, in line with the requirements of its policy 1114, volunteers and Section 355 committees. And Part 2, Council re-endorse policy 1114, volunteers and Section 355 committees as presented. And Part 3, Council re-endorse the Section 355 Volunteers Management Manual as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
Just a clarification on 77, down the second last box, shouldn't it be a Rotary Club of Oberon? Shouldn't it be a member and not the whole lot, so that you had someone just representing it, not, if you get what I mean, you could get outvoted. In other words, it should be a delegate.
Well, yes, I think putting delegate in there is probably an appropriate adjustment.
Okay, and
I think they might all turn up.
well, they could all turn up. You never know what happens. And on page 78, I thought Councillor Andoni indicated he wanted to go on the Heritage Committee. And he's absent on that list, but I thought that was his request. Did he not phone through today?
Through the chair, no nomination was made by Councillor Donny to be on.
He phoned me after I'd phoned him a couple of times over the weekend. He said that he thought he made application to go on it. So.
Through the chair, that's definitely not the case.
Through the chair, I had some text from Ian Donny, not councillor. He doesn't believe he did actually fill out the paperwork and may have missed it. So that was my last conversation with him. So I don't think.
Well, through the chair, if there's additional members that want to be on, I don't think we should preclude that. If someone shows an interest in these committees after the endorsement, if council are reminded to endorse this, if at some point in time the committee gets a nomination from someone to sit on that, it's simply a matter of bringing that back to the council and get endorsed that way. It still gives council that option to say no, but it also gives council the option to in fact endorse that process.
Okay, and on page 78 also, do we need 3 people from the public community to go on the tenant panel? That was all, where it's used to be only 4 total, and then how you're going to end up with 6, but I'll leave it up to the council. Mary Baines filled the position and had great knowledge of the community.
So through the chair, it's purely an application that's been received. If council are of mind to reduce that, then that's your, you have that ability to do so. But, and Councillor McCarthy's right, it's usually just one. There has traditionally just been one member of the community on that panel.
Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I support Councillor McCarthy on that. I would suspect that I'm on that committee, so on that panel, so I would suspect that the strongest choice there would be Mary Bain. I'm pretty sure that I'm a firm believer in the smaller the committee, the better job they do. If you want to slow something down, stick a few more members on it. I'd be only accepting one of those, and Mary Bain would be my number one pick. Just a comment.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'd just like to make a statement in regards to the Independent Living Units panel. I understand that by having a small committee, you can often get things done quickly and efficiently. Sometimes we've got to look at the factors of our ageing population, and a couple of the people that have actually applied to this are very experienced and very dedicated in the field, especially one of them with aged care. And I figured having someone with that kind of capacity and experience would be so far better beneficially, due to the fact that they can look at a lot more things that may be needed in the care factor than at other times. That's all I have to say on that.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this? Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in reply to Councillor Hayden, these are actually independent living units. They're not supported by aged care providers. So I think we need to keep in mind that. I know Ashley does tremendous work, and as I said, my feelings would be that Mary Byrne would be the stronger option, but it's just an individual thought. But they are independent, not serviced.
All right. Well, that means we're not going to, if we cut down those numbers, we won't be endorsing it as presented. So you need to move an amendment to make that happen.
Well, I'll move an amendment that we use or that we select one application that the community representative on the independent living units is a single person, one person.
We need a
resolution.
Mary Byrne.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll second that, but we've also got to include that we changed it Rotary to be a representative.
Just a delegate.
Delegate.
Yeah.
We can put that in.
Put that in as part of it.
So there you have a motion with an additional 0.4. If Clive's happy with that, that's one thing. But you need to go to.
I can't second it anyway.
Well,
what's that?
I can't second it anyway.
No, I'm just talking about whether we add a point without needing an amendment.
Yeah.
Are we? It's an amendment. So I'm just making sure that if
it's an amendment being proposed by Councillor McKechnie.
Yeah,
so
only if the mover.
I'm happy for it to go in the initial recommendation. But it's up to the mover and the
I
second.
don't know whether Councillor Hayden would support that.
No, I don't believe so. We've put out requests for members of the public to make an application to be part of a committee. So no, I'm not going to support a change on that.
No.
They've already done that.
No, that's fine. So you now need an amendment.
All right.
So now you get a mix amendment.
So we got that there.
It's just procedural, councillors. We're working through the.
Are we just adding it?
So you're adding a 0.4. So it's all those 3 points. Plus a 0.4. That councillor appoint Mary Bain as the independent representative on the independent living units tenant panel.
As a community
As a
representative.
community representative, so thank you. Units tenant panel. The mover being
We need to take independent out before representative. Community.
Tony Whittlesey. So hang on, we haven't got one
We
yet,
haven't
so
got
you
one
need to just move, like, copy that. Yeah, sorry, you just wait for, yeah. No, that's fine, she's done it right. So now you're looking for a second, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have a seconder for Councillor McKechnie's amendment. Councillor Tucker.
Okay,
Oh, I think I've said enough. We don't need to add any.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't personally know the people involved, but I'm happy to take the advice of those who do. And I think Councillor McCarthy would have accepted he'd moved the motion, my understanding. So it's just to help get the amendment considered.
Councillor Watt, you put your hand up?
Yes. My gut feeling is, I don't know any people involved in this, but my gut feeling is that I would prefer to accept them than narrow it to one. We're not planning D-Day here. This is just independent living units. People have put their names forward as being happy to be involved in this important committee, and so my preference would be, without knowing any of the individuals and knowing very little about the independent units either.
Through the chair, it relates to panel selection only. It doesn't relate to anything that goes on in the unit. It's about selecting people to go into the units. If that,
Okay,
if
that's
that,
a bit
if that
different.
gives you
That's a bit
an understanding.
And there are other members apart from councillors, and it's the medical centre and the
Pharmacy.
pharmacy. Yeah, so there's a range of people.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be advised by people much better informed than me on this in that case.
Right.
I was just going to mention, you got the doctor, the chemist seat, and the independent person that you've chosen. You've got a good array across the section, the community, what's going on. So, yeah. And then the councillors. I've always been for and to keep it pretty well down pat, except when we had Andrew Godden one day. Mary Square, so that was a new one.
That's the one.
Can I just ask, so these people have put themselves forward, clearly they want to be, well, they're volunteering, as all these wonderful people are. How do we let them know now that their applications?
Through the chair, you haven't resolved to do that just yet. But if you do resolve to do that, we would simply say thank you for your, at this point in time, there was many members and there was, we've chosen one. There was one seat.
As per tradition, perhaps.
Well, it is part of the committee. This is the general structure has always been one, but that doesn't mean, once again, that you can't have more. So this is the council's decision.
All right. So we have not re-endorsed section 355 on, oh, sorry, where are we? It's the first one. Can you scroll down a bit, Hannah? One, I was looking at the original number one. Sorry, there, that's it.
Yep, that's fine.
So, okay. So that's saying the named people, except for the independent living units, which would be Mary B and only.
So yeah, so this amendment seeks to endorse all the people, and the Rotary cover, like the delegate is a given, like that doesn't need to be formalised in a recommendation. The third one says we re-endorse the manual.
Yep.
And the fourth one is indicating only one community representative on the attendance code, as this amendment sits.
All right, no more speakers on for the amendment. All right, I'll put the amendment. All in favour? The amendment becomes the motion. All in favour of the motion? Passed. Unanimous. All right. 13-12, councillor superannuation.
Mr. Mayor, I have to declare that I may not have raised a declaration of interest in that I was a council member who received superannuation payments prior to July 22, and therefore second part may apply in that council staff will have to work with me in relation to that. I don't know if there are any other councillors in the same boat.
I'm in the same. I hadn't really thought of it that way, and I will have to accept that I have potential conflict of interest.
Yes.
At which point I will vacate the chair, and
it can't go to the deputy.
I will ask the most senior councillor, which is Councillor McCarthy, to come back to the chair or just take the chair.
While I'm on that issue, Mr. Mayor, I had noted it's slightly related issue, but the code of meeting practice endorsed by the council and has gone on public exhibition notes that someone on an audio visual link has to apply, such as myself in the current situation, has to apply to the general manager, which I did formally, but there actually has to be a resolution of council to approve me attending as audio visual link. That is in 524. Now that may not be applicable and has not taken effect yet because it's on public exhibition. And maybe I should make a submission, but there does seem a bit of a dichotomy there.
Well,
make application to the general manager, and there's meant to have been a resolution that I be permitted to attend by audio visual link at the beginning of this meeting.
Just be thankful that it's not enforced yet.
Yes, exactly. I wonder whether that just needs some change of wording, but I'll discuss that later with the general manager. Anyway, I'll leave the meeting. I'll take my mobile. If someone can give me a ring on it to come back in.
Just
go
ahead.
Andrew leaves.
Yeah.
Why can't there be a request from the general manager for the current councillors to refund the money? Just an operation thing.
Well,
and you may well go down that track, but Mark and I, the mayor and I can't vote on that.
I can't either.
I didn't know you took
take super.
Well, I've got a reduction in the
remuneration. That's tax.
Okay. Okay. Right.
So are you happy to come and take the chair for this particular discussion? All right, time is
and Matt, could you just give me a buzz on the mobile?
Yeah.
To the room.
Time is 8:07.
Ring in when we go back.
Okay, no. Time is 8:07.
Or you can mute me, whatever you like.
8:07, and Councillor McKibben is absenting himself from his Zoom link, and Councillor Callum.
Yeah, they'll ring him.
Councillor Callum is leaving the room, and Councillor McCarthy is assuming the chair for this particular item.
Rather than leave the Zoom, I'm going to walk out the door and close it.
That's fine.
Okay, councillors, you've got a recommendation before you to either write off the money as per the report, or you can refund it as a third item.
So through you know,
Because I'll move the recommendation, I can put in number 3. So you've got a report, number 1. Number 2, Number 3 is any of council is caught up in it, in the mistake, can refund the money if they wish.
You don't need a seconder, is it?
Through the chair, option 2 would allow us to do that, just to work with the councillors to work out the best way forward. If you, just to make the process a little bit easier. You don't have a mover and a seconder yet, councillor.
Unless he's just said, I've been the mayor, I don't need one.
Oh, of course.
I'll move or second, whatever you want me to move.
I think that just because you're the chair, I wouldn't mind having 2, but
Okay.
you can do it if you want. Like it's
Okay.
up to you.
Well, Helen, Michael.
I'm happy to do that.
So councillors, just to assist, Councillor Hayden and Councillor Gray. Just in relation to this, council's previously put a set of documents together that paid council super for those wishing to get it in 2021, and it's supposed to start in 2022. What we're simply proposing to do is work with those councillors who in fact received it, and you as a group of councillors who's indicated they want to get super have already received 1 payment. We're simply suggesting what we do is we just defer that first payment into 2022 and then commence from there. And those who have collected it that are currently still councillors, we can work with to do something very similar. There are only 2 councillors where this is affected, which is why we've asked for the $1,000 write-off. So if that gives an indication on what it is, then that gives you the opportunity to debate or ask questions if you want.
Okay, got the report, those 4?
I haven't spoken on it yet.
Hey?
You can speak to it.
Oh, if you want to speak on it, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Billy.
Okay.
The chair.
Mhm.
Thank you for the chair. The chair. Yes, no, this was explained to us when we were at our briefing last week. And I'm very happy to move this motion, and I'm sure that this will all work itself out in the long run.
Okay, second.
That was me through the chair. There may be difficulties in recouping the actual money for tax purposes for each person that's involved. So working with the existing councils probably covers most things. Yes, it's not as simple as just paying back the money, I don't think.
Okay. Okay, you got a thing, those 4? Those against? Go. They'll mark it and come back.
That's how it's done.
Should
Would have made it
House
bigger.
of Representatives
Well done.
grade you up to the chair. That's right.
But tell Mark to come back.
Quickly.
He's back.
Matt, we just finished, you can be back on, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Doing that. All right, time is 8:12. And Councillor Coleman's back in the chair. All right, what is? So is that us? All right. Item 1401, page 82, reports for information. And the first one is, of course, the General Manager's Report 1401, and the recommendations of item 1401 is received as information. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? By Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
Pretty straightforward report. I see we're a short few staff members, but we're trying to fill that spot. So anyway, the current environment might be a bit hard. It's good to see the CFO or whatever we've got, the finance person starting soon. Or just not started. Yeah. Thank you.
yes, it's a pretty straightforward report, and I'm sorry to hear those that have come down with COVID. I hope you recover quickly than me with a head cold, and I'm happy to second this report.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question and one quick correction. The question is on page 84, health and safety, second dot point about Campbell's River Road. It's just a repeat of the question I asked last month about a reply to an email I sent after I received a complaint from a member of the public about the road condition just after that truck rollover. And you said last month that yes, there would be a reply to my email and that you would copy it to all councillors. So I'm just chasing that up.
Through the chair, when that investigation is finalised, we will deal with the matter.
Oh, all right. I thought that meant that it was finalised.
No, the parts of that have been dealt with, but there are other parts that are requiring some
thank you.
additional details. Let's go with that.
All right, thank you. And the small correction is on page 89, the first item, 10th of February. I don't believe you attended the TELC meeting.
Any other questions?
Waving.
Councillor Kevin, how could I have missed you?
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 83 under risk management, and as I'm incorrect, I thought we're basically the same position we've been for several months. Upon the finalisation of the activity, a report will be tabled to the Oberon Audit and Risk Committee for comment prior to being forwarded to council. That does not seem to have moved very far in the last several months.
Through the chair, it's because we've had to disband in the ARIC committee, and once we get up and running, it will be tabled at that meeting.
So that's the independent members.
So it's not going to be forwarded to council in a draft form to even consider at this stage?
Through the chair, there's many drafts being submitted in relation to the project. This is simply a matter of taking what we've approved and adding that to our corporate risk register to align our risks into those different areas with our appetite.
Okay. Because I've seen, I think I saw the September version, and I don't know if it's been updated since then, has it?
Through the chair, it's the next phase of taking our complete corporate risk register and now putting that or sharing that amongst our categories together with our risk appetites for those each individual category. So we have an understanding of where our appetite is and what bits would give you some comfort in taking some risk and what would not.
So I'm just questioning whether it's because now we have gone through that next step, whether it, because ARIC, and that was my next question, which will come to it, but whether it's worth circulating that to councillors, at least at this stage, so we can get an idea of that and even making comments before it goes to ARIC, which may be of assistance or not.
I'm more than happy to provide that in draft form, councillor.
Because you will, the mayor and I made substantial comments on the policy, but this goes a lot further than the policy. I understand that and goes far further down, but I think it might be of assistance.
Noted. I'm happy to do that.
Now, with the ARIC re-establishment, I note that the Central West Joint Organisation of Councils might be doing something, but I also note that Central West Water, Blaney Council, and I believe Upper Macquarie, well, I know Upper Macquarie, are working on doing something in that ARIC space for their respective organisations as well.
Oberon Council's also in principally supported that project as well, because we're all tier 1 councils.
Yeah, that's why that's why when you said Central West Joint Organisation, I thought, well, there's also a subset of that organisation doing something as well. So that's why yeah. So you are looking into that as well, I understand.
Through the chair, we are part of that program, yes.
Okay, fine. No, because I know it's certainly being considered by Upper Macquarie County Council to reduce costs and amortize costs over the various organisations involved. Okay, they're the only comments I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And very happy to see a CFO have been appointed.
As are we.
Any other comments? All right, I'll put the motion.
Oh, can I raise one issue that I forgot that I had a note here, if I could, Mr. Mayor?
30 seconds, Councillor McKevin.
Sorry, the Y management agreement, page 89. There are several references to meetings with legal representatives, etc. Read the Y management agreement. I thought that was already in place. Has an issue arisen out of it, or is it still not signed?
No, through the chair, it's the management, the contract's in place. It's just meeting with people from the Y about certain sections of that management agreement and whether they implement parts of it.
So does that mean they have an issue with implementing parts of it, or they believe it goes too far from what they're actually should have been engaged to do?
No. It's more to do with the current pandemic.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you. It was just unclear. It sort of alarmed me a bit that maybe we hadn't. I thought we'd signed the agreement, so I was a bit, yeah.
This is operation thereof.
Okay, right. No problems.
I'll put the motion that report 1401B received as information. All in favour? Passed unanimously. 1402, planning and development. The recommendation is that the report 1402 is received as information. The mover and seconder, please. Councillor Hayden and Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's pretty straightforward. Good to see things happening with the 2 car space carports and the roof finally finished down there. The off-leash dog park, that will be exciting to get happening and up and running, and the swimming pool complex upgrade that is needed. And that is it.
In front of you, there should be basically a page disappeared, which was had all the graphs in it. So, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing further to add. Happy to second the motion.
Any other comments? Councillor McCarthy.
Ladies first.
I've got you first. It's all right. We have an opportunity.
Yeah, just the waste facility. Has anyone touched base with Anacon Group recently? Apparently we've been offered an easement. Are we going to take that offer up? The offer there is a request for support to get the power onto their property. Have we got any?
Through the chair, we're working with that individual owner and also Essential, because we want to do it underground, whereas Essential saying, oh, it's a rural subdivision, or rural subdivisions go above ground. So we're having a conversation with them about this is a large lot residential area, and surely we can look at underground power, because my understanding is if it wasn't underground, the particular person isn't interested in a 20-metre easement across their land, which I wouldn't be either.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either, but we must take part of King's Estate. Some of that's underground in a rural subdivision, might only with a low voltage.
And this is to do with trying to get them to understand this is a large lot residential area, not a rural zone.
And okay. And with R&J Regulatory Services, they're doing a volumetric survey. Right? I don't know. Do they cost us a fortune, this service, or R&J Regulatory?
Through the chair, they're not undertaking the survey. That's been undertaken by a surveying company from Bathurst, but they're undertaking through their expertise to do an assessment of the volumetric survey done in 2018 versus the one done.
Yeah, I understand that, Director. What I'm concerned about is we have people turning up with compacted waste bins and they scream out when they got 1.5 full and they want to ring the office. We should have the size of those bins. When they turn up to our operator, that is the size of the truck that they pay for. They don't ring up and say, ring the lady in the office, she'll give me half a load. When Cleanaway turn up, they're either 12-metre bins or whatever. It should be a statutory requirement that when they turn up, that's not there at the moment.
Watch this space in our fees and charges document for 22-23.
All right, it's taking a while to get on top. What about, okay, all right. What about the tip trucks that go out there from the regulars that come from the factories?
My understanding is that they've got a separate agreement through volume based numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kevin, I'm going to go to Councillor Trembath.
Right.
Before you. Councillor Trembath.
Through the chair to the director, I've been looking at all your DA applications and I know you said it slowed in February, but it was only by 2 from the previous month. So based on 20 working days in a month, I think your team are getting quite a lot of applications in the last few months. I'm glad to see that you've probably got someone coming on board to help with this backlog. My only question is, when does that person start, and what do you think would be the timing around trying to clear some of the backlog on your DAs?
Through the chair, I had confirmation today that our new senior town planner will commence on Monday, the 11th of April. The cross fingers that does happen. And as part of obviously that person coming on board, we've looked at the current contractors remaining for a period of time to reduce the backlog here. We're still also looking at our health and building surveyor as well. So we need to keep the contractors for a period of time to get the numbers down.
They must be drowning at the moment with the amount of, if you look, I've broken it down into months so I can see sort of as they're coming through, and they're fast, definitely. So yeah. Well, I suppose.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Trembath has raised a number of issues which I was going to raise, so I'm glad she did so. But just back to the Oberon Waste Facility comments on page 90. I thought the JS Regulatory Services, and this is probably in response to Councillor MacArthur's volumetric surveys, were indicated they were going to do that in their report to us originally. So I'm assuming that their review of those surveys would be part of their original fee structure that they forwarded to us. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, it's an additional requirement to their original quote. However, they did indicate that would be part of a future works that they were proposing to do for council if we asked.
So the next paragraph, it says the site inspection. When was the site inspection? Also consider the progress of short-term recommendations from the JSR report dated August 21, and a progress will be provided to back council. Does that mean back to council?
Through the chair, that's correct, yes. And,
and when was the site inspection done, and when do we expect that report?
Through the chair, the site inspection was undertaken approximately 4 weeks ago.
Yep. Yes.
So I'm anticipating the report will come before council at the next meeting in April.
In April. And I thought it was indicated at the last council meeting that this the trial of the telehandler front end loader should be completed by this council meeting. That's what my note said.
Through the chair, that was correct. However, we couldn't get access to the equipment through a hire company. We've now received quotes, and there's availability of equipment to move forward.
So where you say during the period, I'm not sure what period, and
That should be.
the trial will commence in March and will be completed and a report provided to council by the April meeting on the telehandler front end loader trial. I'm trying to, it's just unclear from what you've said under these things, the timings on everything. We can't just refer to periods because we don't know what periods we're talking about.
Through the chair, understand, Councillor, given that should be period probably, I think originally was 6 weeks. So I think that report would have to come back before council for the meeting after April, so in May.
In May.
We go ahead with the trial with, the next week or two.
So why does it take, why can't it be in the April meeting?
Because you can't have a 6-week trial period and then report back to April.
Fine, okay, it's 6 weeks trial, all right? All right. Well, so that I don't have to quite keep noting these things down, coming back to them, is there any way of recording these somewhere? No, because it's not a resolution.
Well, you just know.
Apart from the director doing that right now.
Yeah.
And me also doing it, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, my notes say that the quotes, et cetera, front-end loader were anticipated to be at this meeting. Well, I would have thought then that the report should have said quotes are being assessed due to a hold up. If the trial has not been completed by the March meeting, and it is anticipated that the report will be provided at the May meeting due to the 6-week trial period or something.
It's been noted by the general manager and the director.
Yeah, but I just ask when these reports are written that, as I've said before, these matters are not, they're not resolutions, so they don't get reflected in the resolutions report that carried forward actions from the action resolutions. So we need somewhere else for them to properly be recorded. Because as I said, this Oberon waste facility section, I don't believe properly reflects the timeframes that were previously discussed at the last meeting. And I realise that there can be extenuating circumstances that mean that these get thrown out, but they should be then saying, well, we can't do it because of this, and that's what, and we're anticipating it'll be at the May meeting. But that should be reflected. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anyone else got comments or questions? Councillor McCarthy, we'll come back to Councillor Wilson.
Just what was the result to the director from the scrap metal?
Through the chair, you, Councillor McCarthy, you suggesting the dollar amount?
Yeah.
The
So through the chair, even though that's probably commercial confidence, so if you want to go down that path, I'd sort of probably pull it into confidential if you'd like to do it that way.
I'm happy if you don't want to give it out. It'll be in your.
I think
it'll be in your report at the end of the year. So these things that you consider confidential, will be come out later on.
Sorry, there is a contract that we've entered into, council, with a tenderer that would dictate the terms. That's all I'm saying.
I realise that, but quite often when you're doing roadworks and things like that, at the end of the year, it produces a statement to say we spent this amount with this contractor, this amount with this contractor, and yeah. Anyway, I'm fine.
So through the chair, this is not spending money, this is receiving money.
I'm trying to, yeah, I'm happy with that, but the amount of money that's involved, to me, it's so blasé, the way that no one records how many loads went out, no one records the weight when they're on the truck. And I just think that it's not handled right. We should have a camera out there on the tip, knowing their activities that are out there outside operation hours. And I appreciate that they can go there, they go there after hours to pick up the scrap metal, but we should know as a council how many loads go out.
through the chair, they do take the loads to a weigh station in Sydney, and that's then confirmed back through a report from the company to council. They don't know the weight until they go to through the chair. They don't know the weight until they go to that weigh station back in Sydney.
Maybe a weighbridge will fix that.
The weighbridge, yeah.
They've got scales on their trucks, so they don't exceed it, but anyway. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a very
Oh, sorry, Councillor Watt. My mistake.
minor comment, just on the animal pound, I noticed that 4 cats were disposed of in April. On the side of the graph, you seem to have provision for disposing of half a cat. Fortunately, I know 4 I'll dispose of on this occasion.
Can he
All
join
right.
your team?
All right, thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion. All those- Motion is passed. All right, moving on to 1403, technical services, monthly activity report. Recommendation is that the report item 1403 is received as information. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor McCarthy, Councillor McGeckney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, quite extensive. Just a clarification, if we can, from the director, is that right that the principal contractor out on the Campbell's River Roads terminated his services? Or is the information I've been given incorrect? He completed his work.
Through the chair, that's correct. He has finished his services pending another engagement. So yes, that is correct.
So has he finished his work, or someone got to finish it off?
Through the chair, certainly there is a little bit more work to be done. Unfortunately, the current provider couldn't stay on with us, so we are looking at sourcing that out, and we're in discussions now with alternate contractors to be able to do the last 1 kilometre, which is outstanding given the rain delays. So that'll be undertaken here in the next week.
Okay, and Lowe's Mount, I suppose I don't live on it, but anyway, it looks good. I'm just wondering where you're pulling up in respect of Gilholmes Lane. You're going to pull up there. In light of the railway line being upgraded, should we forego the kilometre back towards Borg? Is it does anything have to be altered there?
Through the chair, yes, certainly. I'm just going past the bend of Gilholmes Road back onto that straight. That's where the road work for stage 1 will terminate. At this stage, the timing with regard to the cooler weather is most concerning, I suspect, in terms of taking that work on past Borgs. We may have to delay that until September, that component at this stage, because I think it'll just probably get too far cold in terms of bitumen sealing work.
Okay, thank you for your report. There's a lot of work on the common, everything's going. Thank you.
Councillor McGeckney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very good report. A lot of feedback from the community on the work that's going on, especially with the outdoor staff in, coping with the wet weather and the extra growth and grass and our green areas around towns and the villages. They all look extremely well. I went for a drive out through Barriga and back through O'Connell and around the other day. They look really good. So that should be passed on to Chris's staff. The heavy patching works on the Bathurst Road had a lot of comments about the success of it and how good a job it was. And so that's another, it's always good to get the good feedback. And so I'm just passing that on. And very happy to see the start on the turn out lanes at the Mayfield intersection. That's been an issue for a long time, and good to see the work commenced there going forward. So, yeah, I have no problem seconding the report.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question for the director. I'm just curious about, given that we've had such a wet year and we're now 3/4 of the way through the year, and I know that wet weather can really push up the demand for road maintenance work and parks and gardens. I'm just curious as to how we're tracking budget-wise on those activities, and are we likely to have any overruns in any of those areas?
Through the chair, thanks, Councillor Tucker. At this stage, all programs are tracking on budget, only with some delays with regard to weather, of course. I don't anticipate that there will be any overruns on particular roadworks budgets. So, yeah, look, that should answer that question, I think.
Well, it's referred to maintenance more so than construction.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, through the chair, with regard to maintenance, there is, certainly some concerns there in regard to how that is tracking. We are monitoring that through the quarterly budget reviews. So that's just something we'll need to just be wary of. And again, with some of the natural disaster claims that or natural disaster events that we've gone through, we've certainly got some claims that we need to make on some of those particular unsealed road networks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Oh, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to a couple of issues, the Campbells River Road where the contractor has walked off without having completed it. Surely that's a breach of contract, even though there's been extenuating circumstances of wet weather. That contractor is engaged to complete this project, which he hasn't.
Through the chair, yeah, certainly. Look, with regard to the engagement of equipment, that's really probably not a real big issue. It was more so the stabilisation, which was the bigger ticket item for that work. We did engage a particular company whilst they had the equipment there to extend on some of the gravelling components of the Campbells River Road upgrade. However, they did indicate at a certain point prior to Christmas they did have some other future engagements. Understanding that, look, we could not withstand them leaving. They had informed us. So we, certainly, as I said, gone down the path of engagement to finish that off with an alternate company.
But we, as a council, approved on a tender basis the allocation of stabilisation work on Campbells River to a contractor to undertake that stabilisation work. If that's what we approved, we believed we had entered into a contract with that contractor to complete the stabilisation work. The contractor has not completed that. Are you telling us we didn't sign a contract with that contractor to that effect?
Through the chair, we have completed the stabilisation component. What I just did say, though, and I just said that we did extend the work with regard to gravelling. That doesn't involve the stabilisation, and that was made aware at the time that they did have a certain time period to be able to assist us. So, look, at the end of the day, that's not part of the contract. They were a sublet company in which we had a separate conversation with.
Well, as I understand it, and I believe there have been a number of incidents on Campbells River Road, this contractor hasn't stabilised the road particularly well, and you admitted that in the last meeting, that there are soft issues on a number of the shoulders on the road, which to me means that it either hasn't been rolled properly, stabilised properly, or the gravel is not correct. But I'm no expert in these matters. I'll defer to others who are. So does that contractor have some liability for those issues, which, as I understand it, there were issues with several trucks, as Councillor McCarthy said at the 15th of February meeting. Forestry Corp had said to their people to be very careful on the road, as of others. So has that involved the contractor that has walked off, has left the job?
Through the chair, it's not to do with the stabilisation component. There were some issues originally with that, which were rectified by the stabilisation contractor. Again, we've had some issues here just recently with regard to material and wet weather, and those issues are being worked through as we speak. So again, I think it's unfortunate regarding the weather more than anything. So, and the gradient of the section of road that was actually where it occurred on Campbell's River Road. So that's what is delaying us at the minute in finalising this particular roadwork. Unfortunate to the contractor having to depart for a prior engagement.
Is it true that some gravel was put on the road and then removed?
Yes, that is true. There was some gravel put down on the particular road. It was quite a steep gradient on that particular section of road. It did get wet. It had to be windrow to one side, and again to try and get it through a period where trucks could get traction on that grade, which the material had to be removed and stockpiled for reuse in another location at a later date when it did dry. So look, again, it's the difficulty of the wet weather around that particular scenario. Unfortunate as it is, we are addressing it as we move forward.
So it's not the gravel quality.
You've had a pretty good crack at this, and other people might want to have a say as well.
Look, through the chair again, it's not the gravel quality, I don't believe. Look, again, the production rate from a particular quarry, the gravel wasn't, I suppose, as moist as what we were receiving, and that was because it was in production. Again, that went the other way when the wet weather came and we got excessive rain on that particular section of road that was exposed to the wet weather. So that's just the unfortunate outcome of what has occurred.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that's got questions?
I don't have a question. I'm just going to comment that the team through the chair definitely have quite a lot of work happening across the LGA, and I suppose just reiterating that the work that was done at O'Connell has been amazing. The speed that contractors carried out the work, and left it in a place that everyone can see exactly what's going to happen and go from there. So it's really good.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion that report be accepted as information. All in favour? Thank you. Monthly activity report for corporate services. First issue, the summary, it talks about November 21 to January 22. That in fact should be just February 22. Recommendations, the report 1404 is received as information. So I've moved and seconded, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Pretty straightforward report. Full of plenty of information, and I'm quite happy to move it.
Councillor McCarthy.
Pretty straightforward. Just a concern about the CTV that the tourist hotel is having out there. How long's that one been down? I thought, yeah, I thought we had an agreement when Lynette Stafford was there, because we checked every Friday, and if one wasn't working, we were to get a report back. I'm sure that's the case, because they said that we'll make sure we'll check it, and we didn't have to have an operational thing in plan.
I recall that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why we need a process that someone ticks off on it every Friday to say that they're working. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Through the chair, as Councillor McCarthy has indicated, there has been some issues there. We do receive a live feed from 20 odd cameras on a daily, and that particular venue has not had electricity for quite some time. So we have reworked the network to get around that, because it's a daisy chain system that we do have, and with some of the infrastructure problems we had with the camera at the medical centre, we've repurposed some of that from the tourist hotel. So we do check the feeds every week, but that has been a particular issue with the way that old system is mounted there. So we are looking at a report on the whole network to come back to council, but that one is one we've had to move around in terms of no power at the venue.
I'm not having a go at you, Matt. I'm saying that we were trying to get a process in place and then we were told that we didn't need it because of the insurance of the staff. We're going to check it every Friday. So what I'm getting at is it hasn't been working for a while and we never got this process to say, hang on, this one isn't working. And anyway.
Through the
Let's
chair,
move
the
forward.
director just said that we're working on workarounds in order to keep our network operational. The tourist hotel one that looks at the tourist hotel also hasn't had any activity at the tourist hotel.
You're missing the point, Mr. Manager. Anyway, let's move forward.
Okay, anyone else with questions or observations? I'll put the motion that the report item 1404 is received as information. All in favour? Thank you. Item 1405, the statement of investments. The council recommendations, council receive report item 1405 as information. Move for a second, please. Councillor McKechnie and Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, interest rates didn't rise for us. I notice we've got quite a lot of investments maturing in 2022. But unfortunately, with what's happening overseas and Reserve Bank holding rates down, we should be very careful how long we reinvest these for. And I'm sure that's all in very capable hands. That's all. 10% would be fair for everyone. Lenders and borrowers.
Yes, I'm very happy to second the report. I did want to ask a question of how come we split the amounts as they are and invest in so many different banks instead of just say leveling it to a particular amount and not so many?
Yeah, through the chair, the approach is based on ensuring we have significant cash flow. So generally we mature a term deposit every fortnight to allow that we have ongoing operations and we try to spread the risk around, and the management account will obviously work through their third parties to secure the best rate at the time. So that's what we do, a reasonable spread across the portfolio.
Yeah, sufficient.
We also have the investments policy.
Yeah.
It dictates how much we can and do spend with each individual institution to try and spread the risk, minimise the risk.
Any other comments from anyone? I'll put the motion. All in favour? 1405 is passed. 1406 grants monthly update. Recommendations report item 1406 is received as information. Move in a second, please.
Andrew's moving.
You're waving, Councillor McKibben. And Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you. I'm very happy to move this and note that we have received from the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grant amounts for the Oberon Visitor Information Centre, the Vic revamp, and the former councillor Kerry Gibbons will be very pleased to see that the Black Springs Hall Energy and Heating Upgrade Project has been awarded $52,000. He's campaigned for that for a long time. I'm not sure if this was made known to the community on Monday night. It was not there. I could ask Councillor Hayden through you, Mr. Mayor, if they're aware of this.
Yes, they are aware of it and they are very happy about that. The only concern they had was reconfiguring from a centre roof installation to the sidewall.
And also it's pleasing to see that our Taranaki Heritage Railway and the Oberon District Museum each received independently grants for their respective organisations. I'm very happy to push this recommendation. I note also the lot of work that's been done on the road classification review and transfer for the roads Albion Street, Campbell's River, and the Abercrombie Road. And I note that do we have any idea when the Building Better Regions Fund R6 will be announced in relation to the Oberon sewer treatment plant, 2.3 million?
Through the chair, I think it was December, wasn't it?
No.
February 22. It was lodged.
It was about the time, it was due to close about 5 days after we got that very strong letter of support from Andrew G.
Right.
For that particular grant.
So we don't know when they're going to be making the determination.
I think probably within a month.
Okay, fine.
About.
All right, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Yes, it's pretty straightforward, and I'm happy to see all of the allocated grant and funding. A bit sad with the couple that were unsuccessful, but there's plenty more coming up, and I'm sure that there will be some more allocations in the future.
Okay. Anyone, Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick questions on page 111, both in relation to the road classification review. First off, point Albion Street, it says reclassification from a local to a regional. I was under the impression that Albion Street was already a regional, or has that changed?
Chris? Have to unmute, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. I think there's a typo on that particular report, which the grants coordinators incorrectly put that as a local. It should have said state to regional, regional to state road. Yes. That's what we're looking for as part of the reclassification. Just to confirm.
Thank you. Second question is on the third dot point on Abercrombie Road. Just after an indication of if that application is approved, if that goes to a state road, that would reduce our block grant for regional roads, but offsetting that would be increased work under, presumably it would come under the RMCC. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts on, well, how much would the block grant reduce by, and any guesses as to how much work we might get under the RMCC on that road? And
again, through the chair, those figures are unknown, but yes, you are correct. It would reduce the regional roads block grant. 70 kilometres of road to be, in fact, out of 104 kilometres is a significant amount, of course. And again, there are questions that have been raised by other councils in terms of losing regional roads, particularly if they were to become state roads. Then if those councils like Oberon Council involved in state road maintenance council contracts, what does that look like is just unknown at this stage. So we'll just have to watch this space. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer at this stage.
Yeah, and I guess the point that I was leading to was just that the block grant is very reliable funding. We get pretty much the same amount each year with a gradual increase, whereas the work under the RMCC can be a lot more up and down, and it could make budgeting more difficult without knowing just how much work is going to be in any year. That was why I was asking. Thank you.
Okay, Paul. I'll put the motion that 1406 is received as information. All in favour? Passed. 1407, the water and sewer plant report. Recommendation is the report item 1407 is received as information. Move in a second, please. Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Watt.
Good. As long as I don't have to speak comprehensively.
Councillor McCarthy.
Reports speak for itself, but
still concerned that we're getting dirty water and one of our businesses can't operate. The other day was disheartening. Has it been cleared up since so you can operate? I understand that the director of services went down. It's all clear now.
Yep, through Chris.
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, the issue has been cleared. Again, it seems to be problematic matters post-weekend. We are taking additional steps again, as stated to the proponent of the business, that we will be flushing just as a precautionary measure early first things on Mondays, just to ensure the water mains are clear as they can possibly be. We're currently in the process of scoping the work with Clearflow Australia, who were awarded the water main cleaning of the reticulation. So we're hoping to have that program very shortly in its undertaking. They were delayed given the floods across the across the state and into Queensland where they're based. But we did have discussions with them today, and we're working on a scope of work for Oberon. So that's where we're at this stage.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think I have a great deal to add on this report. I guess I'm probably for a discussion later. I'm not sure why we get spikes of iron and manganese. I presume that's related to our geology or our soil, and that's a contributor to our water quality problems.
And the dam in which you get it from.
But
And the source in which you get it from.
But that'd be related to geology and soil.
Yes.
Yeah. There's not much we can do about that.
Stephen Hall.
Thank you.
That's all right.
I just have a question. When we're reading our water and sewer reports, we're reading about the manganese and iron and other issues. Do we ever get a report on the fluoride and the treatment that happens on our water plant side? Do we get a report on that at all now that that's something that is being undertaken?
Through the chair in regard to what?
Well, just like we test water for manganese and for iron levels.
Yeah, we don't put that in this report.
Right. No, well, I'm just wondering, will we be getting fluoride reports on the fluoride station and that side of it?
Through the chair, I don't. Only if there was an error or if there was something that's occurred in the system under the water report, we would report on that.
Okay.
But not.
I would think because it has now been a new addition since last year.
Yep.
I would have thought that there would be a formality of some kind of report in relation to that as well.
Through the chair, we have to report to the regulator that the state about what we provide, but there's no reporting that we do locally.
Councillor Hayden, you might recognise that there are a lot of chemicals go into a water treatment plant,
yeah.
And fluoride is 1 part per million. There are, and you haven't done a visit up there yet, have you?
Where to?
The water treatment plant.
I've been up there quite a bit, not recently.
Yeah, but actually, there are an amazing number of chemicals that go into town water, and we don't report them. Except by exceptions, my understanding, there is a problem.
Yeah, well, I've seen the ones where it's mentioned caustic soda and things like that. But I was just wondering, can we get more comprehensive reports on the water treatment side of things in the future, perhaps?
Depends on what the purpose is.
Well, because we're councillors and we like to know what goes into our water system, I suppose.
We're regulated by New South Wales Water, and you can get reports. We can get reports through them.
Through the chair, I'll take that on notice because I don't know whether they are.
That's all I was asking.
All right. Anyone else for water and sewer? All right, I'll put the motion that 1407 is received with information. In favour? Yes. 1408, monthly update of the status of council resolutions, and the report item 1408 is received as information. Move in a second, please. Councillor Tucker. Councillor McKibben. And you're seconding?
I wasn't meaning to, but
You are. Thank you.
Don't scratch your nose.
it's like an option, isn't it? That's all right, that's all right.
Sorry, am I moving this or seconding it or nothing?
You moved it, so you get to speak.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in going through this monthly update, the first item, which is on page 116, the Oberon Waste Depot. I thought there were a few things from 1, 2, and 4 that were still outstanding, but in relation to the JSRS report, but including a number of recommendations that there were in that report, with talking about short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Or are you going to provide us with an update status report on April on those?
Through the chair, that's correct. The report that's coming before council in April will have that update included in it.
Okay, if we could just go through that, and obviously we hope to have a few other bits of information as discussed earlier in your report. The draft plan of the Management Council Reserves, which is on page 118, the 20th of July 21 resolution. This seems to have been with the Minister for at least 6 months. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's the case.
Is every other council having the same problem with their Crown Management Reserves? Because it's a draft plan that every council has to do and was asked to do by the government.
So if you can think back that far, council, you'll also note that it needed to be done by June last year.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in June last year, the state government provided a update and said, "Oh no, we don't need them for another 2 years."
Oh, okay. I'd forgotten that.
We'd already engaged, undertaken, done the consultation. We said, "Well, no, we're not going to hold off for 2 years. We're going to put it front and center and say, provide it to us." But as predicted, nothing's come back at this point in time.
Okay. The next item on the Oberon Sports Complex, the JRPP. The finalisation of the report, has that occurred?
Through the chair,
I think we were still waiting on extra stuff from Borg. This has been going for about at least 3 months, if not longer.
Through the chair, we are expecting some information from Borgs very soon.
That's been the case for the last 2 months, at least, if not longer.
That is the case.
And have Borg been made aware that they are delaying the JRPP approval?
Only every week.
In writing, I assume. Right, in writing. Okay. Is it something that the new, or that should be pushed up to the mayor to take on with Mr. Borg personally?
I'd strongly advise against getting involved in a DA process that is going towards an external organisation to assess.
All we're doing is asking Borg to provide the information that they've been asked for. There's not getting involved in the JRPP determination.
I'm happy to take that on board.
I leave that to you, Mr. Mayor, but this has been going on so long, I think.
Has been, and I am very aware that there has been significant number of requests to board, and they have said it'll be here next week or the week after, and it hasn't turned up.
So I'm asking whether in your position you should be approaching Mr. Borg directly to say what is happening here. This is delaying something that we are meant to be working on together. We're not approaching the JRPP, we're approaching Borg, is meant to be providing them information so the JRPP can make a determination.
Correct.
So I would suggest that it needs, that maybe some mayor to Mr. Borg is probably necessary at this stage.
And I said that I shall be doing that.
Right.
I'm not going to get it this week, but next week is probably an opportunity to do so if he's around.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the matters that I will raise. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to recommend this report.
You
Oh,
forced
it.
it.
Councillor Tucker. Sorry.
Accidentally, and but no, I have no comments or questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
With the one through you, Mr. Mayor, that Andrew spoke about, is there two items? One, the requirement to get the sports complex approved through the JRPP, and then hasn't Mr. Borg submitted that he'd like to change the concept plan? Isn't there two different matters here to the general manager? What I'm getting at is the
Through the chair, I'm happy to go into confidential and discuss these matters where the resolution lies.
Well, what I'm getting at is why hasn't the JP approved the plan? We were led to believe it was going to be approved in January. Before this modification of that concept plan was.
The matters are still outstanding. We're trying to work with the parties to get them done imminently.
So was the plan submitted to the JAP incomplete? Well, there's got to be something wrong.
Through the
It's out
chair,
there.
it's a DA matter that you need to work through, and you're working with external authorities that you need to appease.
Like the RMS or whatever they call themselves this week.
Transport for New South Wales was one of those, yes.
So who else was there?
Essential Energy.
Okay.
Is there any others, Director? I think that's the two main ones anyway.
Wouldn't the one with Essential Energy should have been picked up years ago when we first started this?
Through the chair, I would advise what those issues are.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll move on. On page 119, with the two lots of 20,000 we're given, see project scope with consultant service. Can we just have an update?
Yeah,
in the report next time, so where it's up to and who's the consultant?
Yep, through the chair, I'll be bringing back a report on those two things in April.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's passed. Item 1409 Humphreys Drive, Oberon, partial road reconstruction. The report 1401 is received as information. Do I move in the seconder? Councillor Hayden. Councillor McCarthy.
I'm happy to move this report. It's quite extensive, but gives a little bit of an input into what went on with that new subdivision out the road and some of the things that led up to the impact of the recent repairs that have had to be made on the road. And looking at the figures, I feel that they are acceptable figures and they're not too extraordinary as was thought previously.
Yeah, that's it.
Happy to move that, yes.
Yes. Councillor McCarthy?
Oh, yeah, like it's good to get this repaired. It's disappointing that we aren't building roads that should have a 50-year life cycle. This shouldn't repair, fell apart so early, and I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think the straight part off the Abercrombie O'Connell Road down the bottom end is going to fall apart. But anyway, this has given a bit of hope for the people down there that have, I think they got the DA approved last Thursday and are hoping to move forward. Is that correct? Anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, and I think there's another one house pending approval. So yeah, these people can be confident now they can get material on the site where before they couldn't get brick trucks or anything in there. Because anyway, thank you.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst I support this this resolution, I'm wondering what lessons learned can be grasped from what has happened on Humphreys Lane, and I think that Councillor Hayden touched on it, and what we can do to ensure where there are rural residential subdivisions with road pavement design and then construction of that road. I understand that this work was originally done not by council but by the developer. Is that correct or not? That was correct. So how can we ensure better quality from developers in their road construction that doesn't come back and hit council with having to rehabilitate? Are we able to put long-term defect rectification periods of 10 years or latent defect provisions for 10 years on these developers so that they're liable for their roads for a longer period of time? This was just out of the warranty period.
I think Councillor McKibben, the way you do that is by stringent quality control of both the design and construction of the road at all stages, so that it is designed and constructed to the standards required by council. And that clearly didn't happen with this particular road.
Through the chair, there is a couple of lessons learned here, and the first one is for council not to resolve to vary the width of standards against otherwise council staff recommendations. I'll throw that one in terms of how do we get to this point and what are the lessons learned, because those sort of things don't assist in this regard either. Now, there are a number of applications and modifications in this space, and yep, I agree that there are some lessons that need to be learned, but they need to be learned across the board, not just from a staff perspective.
So could I ask, that, and I don't know whether this is appropriate as a amendment to this recommendation, I think I'll discuss the concept that out of this, we have some lessons learned derived from this, and I would also suggest that we consider increasing the defect liability period or latent defect liability periods as well on road construction done by private companies. That we come out with a report with some specific lessons learned on this project, and that we look at ensuring that those lessons learned are pushed through our technical services department as well as brought back to council, noting that what the general manager's comment in that that a resolution by council to reduce the width may have had implications also for the quality and longevity of this road. We don't want this to happen again. It's cost $60,000 now. It'll probably continue to cost us into the future. This is exactly what we don't want, is recurrent costs like this hitting our budget.
Councillor McKibben, I think I agree with you. I think we can spend a lot of time dealing with a report for information, when what we should be doing is seeking a, and not by resolution at this stage, so I don't want to go through all that, but seeking a policy on those developer roads and the processes that should be put in place around them. Now, that is something that will probably take a little while to develop, but that should provide the framework so that, for example, when we've got Highland State building their roads, that they're built to a standard which will make them last for 50 years and not fall apart in 8 years.
Okay, so is it appropriate that we just amend to add and I know we talked about, just to say that a report be prepared on setting, emanating from this issue that sets out future requirements on developers for the construction of roads?
I think we need to spend some time working out how to do what that's going to look like.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that we. I'm just making I'm just suggesting that the recommendation would be that the report be developed to provide some guidelines. I'm not suggesting what the guidelines are at this stage.
And so you're going to move that as an amendment?
I am, yes.
Just keep it quick.
I'm keeping it simple. And I'm not at this stage putting a timeline on it. Though obviously we'd assume it could be back to us by June, July. Is that reasonable, General Manager?
Through the chair, I'd have to discuss it with my technical services director and what that then means, because putting standards on road design isn't just saying standard, there's quite a bit in that.
Isn't that something we should be putting through policies and procedures?
We're talking about.
And why are we putting that now on a report that's just basically
Outlining
to make it happen?
Right, okay.
Just to make it happen. And I won't put a timeline on it. It'll just sit in the resolutions thing. But I'd like, obviously, because it could take some time to do, I appreciate.
May I be excused for a moment, please?
And if you want to move it to the Works Committee as an issue for that, I don't, you know.
That's probably where we'll deal with it.
I think that's where it should sit.
Yeah.
I'm happy for that, as long as it's put on the agenda for the next Works Committee meeting, please.
Well, maybe
Well, it won't be the next works meeting.
Well, it can be on the agenda, and then it would be a resolution at that Works Committee that this would be.
With the amendment, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you.
Councillor?
What do you want to say?
Sorry. That a report, or that a report be prepared detailing guidelines for developers in the construction of roads for future consideration by the Works Committee.
I just put by council.
Oh, by council, all right.
Yeah.
For future consideration.
For future consideration. I have a seconder.
we got a seconder?
Well,
you're going to be a seconder, or you just got something to say?
or suggesting a further
Yep.
change to that amendment.
Yeah.
If Councillor McKinnon is happy with it. One of the points I was going to raise is just to what extent the limitations within our current DCP may have contributed to this problem.
Yes.
And wondering if there's some way we can incorporate in that second, in point 2, that we also look at the current DCP and what changes might be necessary.
So through the chair, based on that resolution now, that's the way we'll be attacking it regardless. If that makes
Okay,
sense. So that's the mechanism in which we'll use.
Okay.
That's, I certainly anticipated that was probably the case. Yes, right.
The allowances within the DCP that could have contributed to this a problem are the things we also need to look at and trying to get rid of.
All right. So
I concur with your comments, and that's the way we'll be looking.
All right. So, do you want to speak to any further to the amendment, Councillor McKinnon?
No, I don't. Mr. Mayor. I think it's clear what I'm leaving quite a bit of discretion to the general manager. I just think we need to capture lessons learned and learn from them where possible.
Great. You're fine?
I'm fine, thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against this? All right, I'll put the amendment. The report be, are you wishing to talk, or you're already voting?
I'm voting. Oh, sorry.
Guidelines for developers in the construction of roads for future consideration by council. All in favour? All right, the motion, sorry, the amendment has been passed. It now becomes the motion. And the motion is that report item 1409 has received this information and
Sorry.
and the report be prepared detailing guidelines for developers in the construction of roads for future consideration by council. All in favour?
Sorry, don't we have further discussion at this point? Because there's a couple of other questions I had on the original report.
Yeah, I thought we'd already the motion sorry, the amendment becomes the motion. We've already spoken to the motion by everyone who had the opportunity. Well, you did. You seconded.
Yes, we'd spoken on the amendment, but not everyone has had a chance to speak on the original motion. I had a couple of further questions. I might be getting the process confused.
Well, the original motion was just for information.
Yes, and I had some questions relating to that.
I think you've missed the boat, actually. Okay. So,
well, most of them I was going to do that anyway, because I've got quite a few, and I don't want to waste everyone's time.
So the motion has been passed. It now the amendment has been passed. It now becomes a motion. All in favour? Against? None. All right. 14, 15. There's no urgent business. And we're now going to go into a closed session. I need a mover and a seconder to take us into closed session, Councillor McCarthy and Councillor McKibben. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 102A2 of the Act, sorry, 10A2 of the Act, and should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the media and the public. So at this point, I don't need to read that lot out, do I? No. So we've been moved into confidential, so stop recording.
Good work. We'll remove the attendees. Except them ones.
Except them ones, we want them to stay.
Don't remove them
Don't
ones. Yeah, all intended as a call. That's three.
No, mover for going back into open session, please. Councillor Hayes and Councillor Tucker. Okay, we're recording. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government General Regulation 2005. Sorry, my apologies, I've got that wrong. All right. The following resolutions were made during the section of the meeting that was closed to the public. There were no members of the public present at that time. With regard to matter 1601, a water write-off request, account number 123-61926, the council resolved to not write off the excess water for assessment 123-61926, but instead offer a payment plan arrangement for full cost recovery. In relation to item 1602, accounts that the land purchased on the corner of Abercrombie and Campbell's River Road at Black Springs. The council, the resolution is that council, whilst generally supportive of the proposal, defer any decision of the sale of the land parcel on the corner of Abercrombie and Campbell's River Road to allow the prospective party to submit further details of their proposal to council, after which a further report will be presented. With relation to item 1603, request for water rates repayment, Oberon Council has approved the request from the owner of 27 to 29 Albion Street for the repayment of water rates used during the COVID-19 pop-up drive-through testing facility to the value of $4,112.31 to be paid from the 21-22 COVID-19 fund. With regard to item 1604, electricity procurement, the council resolved to note the report on electricity procurement, note that a reduced tender period has been considered, resolved that because of the extenuating circumstances set out in the report, a satisfactory result would not be achieved by inviting tenders for the aggregated procurement of electricity for large market sites and street lighting, which are due to commence on the 1st of January 2023. Note that the reasons for the decision of council in resolution 3 are as follows. The services with respect to which the tender relates can only be provided by energy retailers. Council has received expert advice that due to the nature of the relevant markets, offers from those retailers which will be made in response to the request for tender will only be open for acceptance for a period of 1 to 2 weeks. Even if the tender period was shortened to 7 days as permitted under the regulations, some, if not all of the relevant tenders would expire prior to council being able to undertake an assessment of tenders. Report the matter to council and resolve to accept any or reject any tenders. This would result in council either having no valid tenders, which it is able to accept, or it would not be able to consider for acceptance all of the tenders lodged in response to the request for tender. This would not be a satisfactory result for council. Or further resolve to delegate the authority to execute the contracts for the supply of electricity for large market sites and street lighting to the general manager, and advise the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation of Council's decision. And at 10:27, I close the meeting. Thank you, councillors, and thank you those who were attending via Zoom, including you. All right.
Thanks.
Everyone.
What have you been eating?